All right, everybody, welcome back. Pack Talk Podcast, episode number 66. This is our Veterans Day episode, and today we are very honored to have Jeff Prindle with us today. We've trained several dogs with Jeff at Canine Revolution Dog Training, so he's part of our alumni community. He also went to the Citadel, so I'm not going to tell too much of his story. I'll let him tell the story. But Jeff, thanks for coming, and tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what growing up was like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me out here. This is awesome.
Yes, sir.
You all have had a huge impact on our family, and won't dive too deep into that, but very, very appreciative. So Jeff Prindle, I grew up the son of a Coastie. My dad was a 28-year Coast Guard aviator. Yeah. So bounced around a lot as a kid, which really had a huge impact on who I am today. Went to several different schools coming up, ended up at the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina.
That's right.
Graduated in 1994 and then set off and joined the Air Force, where I still serve today as a reservist on my 28th year. Also had a career in law enforcement. But most importantly, I'm a dad to my 7-year-old daughter, Ava, and a husband to Deb, who is also part of the Canine Revolution family. So, and
she's an Air Force veteran as well.
And she is an Air Force veteran. Yeah, my wife was a nurse in the Air Force.
Yeah,
and got out. Yeah.
Backing it up a little bit, growing up with your dad being in the Coast Guard. What are some of the bases that you guys went to that you enjoyed the most? Duty stations, if you can remember.
Oh yeah. So the benefit of being a Coastie brat or being in the Coast Guard is you're always by the water, right? Yeah. So wherever we were by the ocean or lake. It was just absolutely phenomenal. Oddly enough, I wanted to be in the Coast Guard, and I'll probably talk about that a little bit later.
Okay.
Fortunately, there was no Coast Guard ROTC at the Citadel at the time. Yeah. So, but it was great. We were always by the water. My dad was a pilot. He was gone a lot, right? Which, of course, it's just part of the business. Mm-hmm. But I always found a way to make time for family. So my favorite place, Cape May, New Jersey, is where I graduated. If you don't know Cape May, New Jersey, just south of Atlantic City, very sleepy beach town, big on tourism, but I just had an absolute blast there.
Yeah.
And then probably the Philippines.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, my dad did
really?
2 kind of cross-service assignments, one in Okinawa, Japan, where he flew rescue helicopters for the Air Force, the big Jolly Green Giants.
Wow.
And then in the Philippines, we were there. My dad was part of what was called the Joint U.S. Military Assistance Group. And we were there during the Revolution with Marcos. It was just a crazy time.
Holy cow.
Yeah, that was just a blast living there.
Yeah.
Just absolutely loved it. So, yeah, I would say definitely Cape May and then the Philippines.
What was his primary role flying helicopters? Was it search and rescue? Or was it just all the above?
Yeah. He was a search and rescue guy. So most of his career doing that. He did have a short stint where he flew fixed wing. He flew the Dolphin. I'm sorry, not the Dolphin, the Falcon, which is the Coast Guard Learjet.
Okay.
Still part of search and rescue, but it was more kind of aerial surveillance, and they would vector in the helos. But he's an all-in helo guy.
Yeah.
Loves to talk about it. His name's Pete Prindle. You could Google him. He's actually has his own. It's like he's written down all his sea stories, right?
Oh,
all the
really?
stories, and I'll share it with you. But if you Google Pete Prindle, it's a fascinating read. So he has written down all his adventures in the Coast Guard.
It's a book that he sells?
Yeah, it's not a book. It's just it's free. He did online. It, I think, for the Coast Guard Alumni Association.
Okay.
He also has his father's stories in there as well. So my grandfather was also a Coastie on my dad's side.
Holy cow.
Yeah. I come from a very, very strong military family, which, we'll dive into a little bit. But
Well, dude, I got mad respect for the Coast Guard because my first deployment, I was on a frigate, and we had a Coast Guard leadet that was on our ship, and those guys are hardcore, bro.
They are hardcore.
And those dudes are fun to work with and train. I was part of EBSS, so we were training with them all the time. But yeah, I'll tell you what, one of the Coast Guard leadet snipers was in one of our helicopters, shooting the engines out of these go-fast vessels that are flying. And one shot, 762, takes out the engine. I'm like, these guys are freaking crazy, bro.
Yes, they are.
But you don't think about the Coast Guard being hardcore like that from a, military perspective,
Yeah, that counter-drug stuff that they do is, it's very high speed.
And they had that movie a couple years come out about the search and rescue swimmers. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, The Guardian?
Yeah, The Guardian.
Yeah.
And so that kind of opened the door to people knowing that level of stuff is going on in the Coast Guard, But
Yeah. I speaking of that movie, so I wanted to be a rescue swimmer.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
really?
yeah. Just for being in that environment with my dad, I was
Yeah.
just fascinated. Always spent a lot of time in the pool, but again, right? So just that was not an option back then.
So you were at the Citadel, and that's when because you wanted to be in the Coast Guard up to that point.
I did,
right?
And I applied to go to the Coast Guard Academy.
Oh, really?
I was not academically strong in high school. I was very distracted,
Yeah.
so I did not get into the Coast Guard Academy. So I ended up going to the Citadel.
Yeah.
My brother was there at the time. My brother was a sophomore.
Okay.
I'm sorry, he was a junior. My brother's 2 years ahead of me. And my uncle had attended the Citadel as well. So there was that Citadel presence in the family. My mom spent a lot of time at the Citadel with my brother. So that was where I ended up going.
Yeah.
Still with maybe some hopes of going to the Coast Guard, but ended up getting an ROTC scholarship, and that kind of launched my career into the Air Force. But so that, growing up as a kid, some kids want to be firefighters, some kids want to be police officers. I wanted to be a rescue swimmer. But,
were you swimming a lot, like trying to train for that as a kid?
I won't say I was that disciplined then, but I wasn't that focused.
Yeah.
I was a fairly good athlete. Did spend a lot of time in the pool.
Yeah.
More recreational, but definitely was all in for that. Just didn't work out.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Man. That's a hard program, the rescue swimmer program.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Super
That
cool.
movie's great. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I ended up, funny story how you applied to the Coast Guard Academy and ended up going to the Citadel. I applied to the Naval Academy. Obviously, my academics weren't that good either. I was a little distracted, like you said, and ended up going to the Citadel too, so that's how I ended up there too. But anyway, so you applied to the Citadel. Tell me what that was like, going to the Citadel for the first time. I don't know if you did any pre-visits or anything. Or
I
your
did.
brother was there.
Yeah,
so.
I did. So I was not prepared for the Citadel. Let me just tell you that straight up. So I went down there for the whole pre-tour thing, and my brother was there. So instead of me hanging out with knobs and understanding what the fourth class system is and the school, no. I'm hanging out with my older brother and all his friends, right? So I still didn't understand it, right? All I knew was, you get to wear uniforms.
Yeah.
My brother came home. He was a big deal with all my friends.
Oh,
And I had a blast down there because I'm hanging out with upperclassmen, so I had no concept. At this time, I had dreadlocks.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't thinking. So
your whole life I known you, you've been bald, man.
Yeah.
Seeing you with dreadlocks would be crazy, bro.
Yeah, dreadlocks. I was into De La Soul, which is old school, right? All that stuff, right?
Nice.
So the night before I reported, my mom gave me some great advice. She was like, son, you need to cut your hair, right? Because she knew growing up with, my uncle and, being there. And I was like, okay, I did it. But, it was like shock when I showed up at the Citadel. People yelling and screaming, as you remember. But I wasn't prepared. I just knew I was going somewhere, wear a uniform, hang out with my brother. My dad wears a uniform. It's good to go. The family thinks this is a big deal. Yeah, I was underprepared, my friend. Underprepared.
What company was your brother in?
He was in Echo.
Was he
really?
Yeah,
he was in Echo. So he was a 2nd Battalion guy.
Nice.
And
where'd you end up in?
Lima.
Okay.
Yeah,
3rd
two extremes, right? And you would think having an older brother at the Citadel would be beneficial. No.
Everyone's saying, hey, so and so's brother, Prindle's brother's over there.
That's right.
Go get him.
Let's make Prindle's brother the regimental runner, right? Let's bring a 3rd Battalion guy into 2nd Battalion. No, Prindle. Right? Yeah, not a good idea. But so showed up to the Citadel. Still kind of lost, but I was there, and it started, right? And I tell you, the best thing that ever happened to me, right? Just the discipline, the structure. I can't say, as you remember, right? After, Thanksgiving break, parents' weekend, your parents are there, it's emotional. And Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? I can't tell you, I wanted to go back, right? But there was no way. The one thing that kept me there is that I knew I'd have to see my brother. For the rest of my life, and he'd give me that look, or he'd knock his ring, right? And I'd be that. So I stayed with it and got through my knob year.
Yeah. What are some of the memories you have from knob year? Whether that be a good memory or hey, this crazy thing happened.
Yeah,
I don't know. Give us some
Deb's
stories,
probably going to get very mad at me for saying this. So sweetheart, please forgive me.
She's not here. We're good.
Yeah, we're good, right? Yeah, this is Guys Club, right? Yeah. My first heartbreak was at the Citadel, right?
Okay.
So my girlfriend at the time, she broke up with me. You get that first phone call, right? And Mom, I did call you first. So call my girlfriend, and she's like, hey, dude, I met somebody else, right? So I never forget. I'm in that phone booth.
Yeah.
I'm hearing this, and I know I want to cry.
Yeah.
But I know if I cry, as soon as I walk out of that phone booth, right? And this is before the days of cell phone. There's no texting and email. It was either Dear John or a phone call.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get it together, right, in that booth. Knowing when I walk out, I'm back into, like the lion's den, right? Yeah. Guys waiting. So, but it was good for me, man. I pulled it together, got out, and, got that first heartbreak out of the way. But I was probably a little more focused for the rest of the time because I wasn't worried about, when am I going to go here and see her and all that. So that was one. Yeah. The second was, I'd say just a camaraderie. I grew up as I'd say a competitive athlete, but I was pretty athletic. I was a soccer player. And you think that the teams that you play on, right, there's that camaraderie and that bond, but there's nothing like your classmates at the Citadel, right, that you go through that fourth class system with. So we were just close, man. They're truly like brothers, right? Just the memories of getting each other through that, right? Some guys were strong academically, not me. Some guys were strong athletically. Just getting everyone through, right? You remember some guys can't shine brass for. Can you cuss on this? Can I cuss?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right.
You're good to go.
G-ready can't shine brass for shit, right?
Yeah.
And just helping one another out, man. Just that camaraderie, dude. And I just, I felt that. And I think that's also probably what compelled me, just another reason to say, man, I need more of this, right? And to go into the military, and eventually law enforcement. So but
go,
just crazy stories, just who pays to get tortured, right? Why did we do that, right? So,
but when I was there, knob year is knob year, but the rest of the years towards the end, I was like, I'm ready to get out of this place. You know what I'm saying? When I was a senior, I'm like, I'm ready to roll, But now I look back on those times, and those are great times. And I talk to the guys that I went to college with. I don't know if I'm sure you stay in touch with them, but that's just a good bonding experience we all reflect on. But can you talk to me real quick about some of your sweep details? Did you guys do those when you were there?
Yeah,
what were those like?
Yeah,
man?
every
back
morning,
in the
right?
day,
Having to empty the upperclassmen's trash cans every morning, and it was crazy. It was it's like in the lion's den, right? You're trying to survive and get this done, and you're trying to navigate these upperclassmen, and come here, Prindle, and and I've always had a little bit of a problem just with sarcasm, right? And maybe just some childhood, and that just never fared well for me, right? Oh, you think this is funny, Prindle, right? And just getting smoked. But we'd have the sweep details. Do you remember just little things like trying to get to the shower or to the bathroom, right? Like, well,
you're gonna get grabbed on the way.
Yeah, right. It's like, man, should I, do I just go in the sink or right? Or right?
That is a thing for those who don't know. The listeners who don't know, when you're a knob, you're peeing in your sink a lot. Yeah. So you don't have to go out into the lion's den, and an upperclassman can snag you for who knows how long.
That's right. That's spraying it out with like Windex, stuff like that's going to kill it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, taking a shower in your sink too. Done that plenty of times. Or you have a washcloth and you're just, because you don't want to go to the.
You don't want
to leave your room because then someone can grab you.
Yeah. I don't know if it was the same when you were there, but we had the doors where like you slide the door up. We didn't have AC, so we used to try to stick like pencils and stuff in there, so the upperclassmen right couldn't get in immediately because they'd come in, kick your door open, throw a trash can, get out of your rack. So we used to stick pencils in there, just to it was like kind of like an early warning.
Gives you a heads up. They're
coming. Delay them. Then we'd pull them out and stand there bracing. Again, I don't. Why did we do that?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned you didn't have AC, because nowadays, or when I was there, we had AC. So, can you just imagine being in South Carolina, humidity with no AC, in the Citadel, just sweating nonstop?
No.
No. I mean, you don't want to relive those days, I know.
No. But I say, when I see the AC there now, I just say it's probably hotter now than when I went through, right? It was before global warming and all that stuff, right? So it wasn't too bad. But dude, it's like, sleeping on top of your rack, you're sweating, and it was insane.
I learned when I was there to basically you make your rack perfect, and then
the T-pins.
And then you take I took shoestring and tied it so tight that nothing would come apart, and I would just put a blanket on top of that, sleep on it, so I never disturbed my rack at all. That way I was good to go for inspections.
Yeah,
and all
it was the
that,
same way. We take I don't know if they had T-pins when you're there.
Yeah,
you get it tight with the clipboard and
Yep.
you T-pin it, then you put a cover over it and you just sleep on that.
Yeah.
Roll it up in the morning.
Yep.
Either put it under your bed or in the ceiling and hide it something like that.
So you're good to go.
Good to go.
Yeah. Well, cool. So did they do spirit runs back then too?
No.
No spirit runs?
What's a spirit run?
That's where basically you do like the Friday parade.
Yeah.
And then after that, every battalion, you go changing PTs.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's doing a run.
Yeah,
together,
we didn't call it
regiment.
spirit run.
What'd you call it back then?
There was no spirit back then, right? It was just something to delay
PT.
you from, it was just PT. Yeah. After parade, you'd come in, you'd change, and get out there with a guide on and run around the deck. Oh, yeah.
Good times, man.
Yeah, it was good times.
I enjoyed that, especially as an upperclassman, getting to smoke some knobs,
Oh, I lived for that, man. I lived for that. Yeah, I would say... So what I'll say about the Citadel, you become creative with your entertainment, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're essentially in prison, right? If you ever look, and I was talking to Jason Williams about this.
Mm-hmm.
The fence system isn't designed to keep people out,
right?
It's to keep you in, but you become so creative with your entertainment, right?
Oh, yeah.
The shenanigans and foolishness and stuff that you do there. Yeah, it's just it's great. But I was all about smoking a knob.
Yeah.
Right? Again,
Oh, yeah.
not focus on the right things in life, but
it
was. Cadre corporal. I was a cadre platoon sergeant.
Nice.
Then eventually the company supply sergeant. So I was a sword bearing junior.
Yeah.
And then it all came crashing down. Right. I just got in trouble.
What?
Yeah.
You got caught? Is that what it was? You got caught playing with some knobs or what?
I did get caught messing with knobs in the past. Yeah. So I think that as a sophomore, but it's all about just terrorizing knobs, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not proud of that, but it was a lot of fun.
It's part of life.
It's part of life, right?
It's a phase.
I wanted them to have a system, right? Is what I say.
Right.
No, I just went off the rails. I think my junior year, right? Just probably got ahead of myself, got a little too confident.
Yeah.
I got in trouble. I was in a knobs room, actually, trying to get tutored, right? I was terrible, and I think it was biology.
Okay.
So I ended up getting pulled. I had some conflict with a senior who was a company commander. So. But was able to weather that storm a little bit. Was Miss Redmond was probably there when you were there. Yeah.
Dang, she's been
Miss
there
Redmond
a long
assistance,
time, bro.
Yeah, forever.
She knows me very well.
Yeah, she knows the Prindle boys well too. Yep. I like to say probably my brother better than me, but yeah. I was able to navigate that. It was okay, but then I just of all things ended up I got in a fight. Again, not proud of it. I just was a little out of control and. Handled things inappropriately, but that was it. That just sealed it, and it was to the quad I went, right? So, lost my, but it was okay, right?
Yeah.
So, because then, right, I got a company transfer out of it, right?
Did you really?
So,
Where'd you end up at?
I was November.
Okay.
Right. So I'm thinking,
the zoo, boys.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, I'm in trouble, and you want to instill some discipline in me. So you're going to send me to November? Let's go. So I was a senior private, probably the best year that I had. Right, I lived with some basketball players, some athletes.
Nice.
Which is always helpful with SMIs and stuff, right? If you live with athletes, no one's coming in your room.
Absolutely.
So So spent my senior year there and had an absolute blast, man.
You rocked out your BT 120. You rocked that out over in 4th Battalion.
Yes.
Hey, funny story, bro. When I got transferred to 4th Battalion. I don't know if you know the story. Yeah.
No, I want to hear it.
When I was actually a knob, started out in 5th Battalion, Papa Company.
Okay.
And my roommate, the upperclassman, did not like because he basically was just underperforming, and so they'd be, Singer, you need to tune your roommate in. You need to get your roommate on board, Singer, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, roger that. So I go to help him get on board, you know what I'm saying? And he basically reports me, and all I did was just give him like a verbal. I just got super intense I'd never touched him. I got super intense verbally. You need to, they're coming down on me because of you, blah, 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 blah. So this guy goes to the TAC officer, tells him he got hazed by me. So this whole thing plays out. Anyway, I end up getting a BT 120 as a knob, bro. BT 120 is it's a battalion transfer, and 120 tours, and a tour is 1 hour walking on the quad when everybody else gets liberty or leave. Yeah, with your rifle. And so
you didn't get any cuts or anything. I mean, you did the
straight to the
straight
BT 120, bro. So they transferred me to Oscar Company in 4th Battalion. And I remember I was around the O course one day, and I was super worried about it. And some upperclassmen from, because by now the rumor had gone around the whole campus, this knob getting a BT 120 for hazing his roommate. That was the story, you know? And so upperclassmen from Tango Company saw me at the O course, running the O course one day. He's like, "You'll love the zoo. The zoo's a great place." I was like, "I don't know. I love the discipline of 5th Battalion. It's hardcore discipline." So I go to the zoo. It's crazy, bro. And anyway, I did the rest of my time there, all 3 years, and had a great time.
Yeah,
you know?
the zoo
was a great place, bro.
Yeah, it's all my Lima class. I'm not saying I want to. I'm a November guy, but it was fun.
Yeah. So and then they put me in a football player's room. But the other thing that happened with that is all the upperclassmen from Oscar Company were visiting me all the time because I was a new kid on the block. So this football player's like, "Why are all these people coming in my room now? Nobody ever bothered me before."
Yeah.
I was like, "I'm sorry,
you
dude."
Showed up.
So yeah, I spent my time on the quad. That taught me a lot. You got a lot of time to think. You know what I'm saying? A lot of time to think and work through things. And then I actually had, when I was a second semester clerk as a sophomore.
Nice.
And had a little disagreement with my company commander at the time, and I don't know what went through my head, but I kind of went into his room and trashed his room one time. Got pulled for that, and did another 61 tours or something like that, or 40, however many tours. But anyway, so then I learned some more things down there on the quad as a sophomore.
Oh man, it's funny you said. Speaking of that, and I forgot. And Chris McDuffie, if you're out there, so did they have shaving cream bombs when you were there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I did the same thing to an upperclassman. It was not a dare. It was a directive from other upperclassmen. I'm not snitching, but hey, hit so-and-so's room, right? So I had the thing wrapped up in webbing and got caught. Yeah. To the quad we went. I forgot all about that, yeah.
Dude, I'll tell you another thing, too. When I was a junior, one of my sophomores, I was like, bro, it was like Halloween season, so I don't know how you guys did it, but we had pumpkins everywhere, and we would literally light pumpkins on fire and throw them off the fourth deck, And so I tell the sophomore, who's like my buddy, I'm like, bro, go up to 4th Division, right over the Sally Port, and light a pumpkin on fire and chuck it as hard as you can. And so while this is happening, the battalion's kind of going crazy. You know how the zoo is.
Oh, yeah.
And so this is happening like in more places, and the battalion's getting kind of loud. So as he's going to do this, and I'm watching him, I'm just loving it, And as he goes to do this, one of the TAC officers is walking in the Sally Port. This dude throws the pumpkin, lands 5 feet in front of this TAC officer, big fireball. This dude's freaking the TAC officer. He's losing it. But we were able to hide the guy. He never figured out who it was, But good times, Good times, you know what I'm saying? That's funny. You tell people, like, hey, go do this, and then you have to cover them, too. But in your case, you got caught,
Yeah, I got caught. Wasn't fast enough. Yeah. Yeah, it's like that creative entertainment.
Yeah.
Did the drains used to flood? Like during the rain?
Not too bad for us.
I say flood because guys intentionally plugged them up. Then they take their mattresses and run and they go flying across the quad.
Yeah, we take Dawn dish soap. I remember doing this. You get down to your skivvies, Dawn dish soap all over your body. You just body slide across the quad during a rainstorm, Usually the guys that are around doing tours are so bored, they're the ones coming up with this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. My parents are probably like, wait. What did I pay for? Yours too, yeah.
But it definitely teaches you a lot, no matter what you do at the Citadel. If you're getting into these shenanigans we're talking about, or if you're, you don't do any of that, and then you just are doing your thing. You learn a lot either way.
No, I agree. I tell you what, the Citadel did not prepare me for was life as an adult, right? And I laugh about this because our lives are so structured there, right? This is when you wake up, this is when you study, this is when you go to class, this is when you eat, this is what you eat.
Your food's made for you.
Yeah, your food's made for you, right? But when I came on active duty as a lieutenant, my first duty station was in Charlottesville, North Carolina, right? At the University of Virginia. So they take a 21-year-old kid who's been, really institution or in prison for 4 years, and your first duty station is going to be at the University of Virginia, right?
Yeah.
It's a gold bar recruiter. Not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But I'm embarrassed to say I just didn't know how to live. And
Yeah.
I had just gotten this new apartment. My parents were living in Tidewater at the time. They helped me get this apartment in Charlottesville, a one-bedroom studio. And, I didn't have any furniture or anything, but so I had to wash dishes, right? I had a little dishwasher, and I put my dish, I'll never forget this, and I put, because you said Dawn dish soap, I put Dawn dish soap in the dishwasher.
I know where this is going.
I slammed it up, I'm confident. I'm like, all right, this is good life. And it starts bubbling. I'm not sure what's going on, right? Again, there's no cell phones, right? You try to get on the landline. Hey, Dad, right? This is what's going on. Wait, tell me what happened. You think I'd shut it off? No, man, the whole, because it's a studio, right? So half the apartment, it's got bubbles and everything in it. I was just like, oh.
You're having a bubble bath in your apartment, bro.
Yeah. My dad's like, you did what? I went, I put dish soap. He's like, son, I raised you better than that. I don't know. Yeah, but just not prepared for life.
Yeah, life skills that you didn't know you needed to know.
Yeah, how to cook.
Yeah.
It's a lot of ramen noodles going down, but you figure it out. Yeah, it's funny, man. Learn a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just not how to be an adult.
Well, I'll tell you from the military side of the house too. One of the things I learned at the Citadel is there's a lot of leaders there that I was like, this dude not good to go. Yeah. And so I would like be like, I don't like the way this guy's doing it, so I'm gonna make sure when I'm in the Navy that I'm not gonna be doing what he's doing. Yeah. And so I'd be paying attention to people around me, and I will say that's probably one of the biggest lessons I learned there, just by observing and interacting with, both the tactical officers that are there, but also just other cadets that are there. Some leadership things you learn as you go. I don't know if that impacted you as well.
No, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. There's a lot of bad examples of leadership there, both in the Corps cadets and I'd say just with the cadre, or the TAC officers and some of the ROTC instructors. For me that was helpful because I'm a security forces officer. So, I said I did that first assignment as a recruiter. Back then, the Air Force was heavy, so folks were actually being asked to leave the Air Force. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, so it was kind of drawn out. I came at the end of the Cold War. We were reducing, so you could wait up to 12 months before you enter active duty after you get commissioned.
Oh,
so
dang.
One of the ways to get on active duty quickly was to do gold bar recruiting. So at the time it was, I would say early efforts for diversity within the Air Force, right? So specifically minority recruiting. So I knew if I did that program, I could come on immediately, right? Start getting paid. I wouldn't have to go back to my parents' house because I watched my brother. He had a delay. So my brother, he commissioned, he got married, and then he's back at the house, right? Like,
is he in the Air Force too?
He was, right? So my brother waited, maybe 6 months to a year before he started his journey. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going back home. Yeah. So I jumped on this program. Was in Virginia, so I was close enough to my parents. But then, but I was a security forces officer by trade. So after that first year, I went to my first duty station. So day one as a security forces officer, you got this young lieutenant, ensign for y'all, and you're standing in front of a flight, as we call them, of 70 to 100 people, right? Yeah. And so the leadership starts then. They don't care where you came from, what you did. They just want to be led, right? Yeah. And it was the Citadel, I think, that that helped me initially. Great Corps senior NCOs and mentors, that raised the lieutenants. But everything that I learned from the Citadel, good and bad. Yeah. I had to apply day one. Standing in front of there as a new guy. Yeah. In front of these defenders. So absolutely. So absolutely. Had I not had that experience, I don't know if I would have been. Not to say I was successful, but I would not have been prepared for sure. Right. Yeah.
And can you just explain to the listener what a security forces officer is for those who don't know?
Absolutely. So back in my time, it was actually security police, and I'll touch on how I got there. So. As I say, I wanted to go into the Coast Guard. That just was not an opportunity. Later on in my time in the Citadel, I could have transferred to another school. At the time, they had a program, it's called the Moore program, where I could have transferred to an HBU and done that. But I was already 2 years in at the Citadel. my classmates, my brother, and I was all in, right? And I wanted the band of gold, so I wasn't leaving.
Right.
So fortunately, I had an R2C scholarship, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in the Air Force. My grandfather, on my mom's side, was a retired Master Sergeant at the time. He retired. Master Sergeant, E7 was the highest rank. It was pre-Chief Master Sergeant. So, so I knew a little bit about the Air Force. My uncle, again on my mom's side, Bud, who's had a huge impact on my life. He was a pilot. So I knew a little bit about that, but I had no desire to fly. Despite my dad being a pilot, my uncle being a pilot, my brother eventually being on aircraft. He wasn't a pilot, but he was what we call scope dope. He was on J-Stars and AWACS. I had no interest in aviation. Can't tell you why. I wasn't smart enough to do it anyway, so it worked out. So my scores weren't high enough. So I'll never forget it. I'm at the Citadel and I see this guy walk across the parade deck in his blues, with a beret on. I went, berets, I've never seen Air Force dude in a beret. It was Captain Dean Newsom, and he was a security forces officer. So I was just intrigued, right? Very fit guy, high speed. So I asked him, hey, what do you do? And then I saw the video, bro. Once I saw the video, I saw, back then, M60s firing, smoke canisters going off. Mark 19, that's the life for me. It's kind of high speed, but it's the comforts of the Air Force, right? So I get the best of both worlds. Go to the field, then come back and play golf, right? Perfect scenario for me. But at the time, it was security police, and it was the name of it. So you would think there's some parallels to military police. There are. We had a law enforcement role, so everything on the installation, law enforcement related, we were responsible for. But we also had physical security. So the physical security side is guarding aircraft or the resources, PO1 resources, bombs, missiles, whatever. So it's split, law enforcement, or it was split, law enforcement and security. But then we had what we call the air-based ground defense mission. So that's the now in today's terms, we call it the expeditionary mission set. So it's the going to foreign countries, building DFPs, defensive fighting positions. So that's what. So essentially responsible for law and order and security of the installation. Right.
I'm assuming if let's say you build a base out in an expeditionary type mission and a C-17 lands and they are staying there overnight, your security forces are in charge of maintaining that aircraft and its contents and all that.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. So, anywhere that you have Air Force assets, you're going to have defenders guarding them, the installation, whether it's people, aircraft. 100%. But I was just intrigued by that, right? By that mission. And I had a conversation with my uncle because, you could pick back then what you want to do. So my number one choice was actually OSI, Office of Special Investigations, which I knew was a very low percentage. Then security forces, and oddly enough, maintenance. And the reason why is because, I had a long conversation or many conversations with my Uncle Bud. And he goes, Jeff, if you want to lead airmen, which I think you should do, security forces or maintenance, right? That's where you are day one, you're going to lead airmen, right? And you're going to develop as an officer. So that's the why. But maintenance, I've worked for a lot of maintainers. I love them. They're great guys, but I'm not mechanically inclined, so I would not have made it. So I'm very thankful, for Dean Newsom, who I saw and was intrigued by and showed me the video and supported me. And then, then the opportunity to go into the career field. So I'm a career defender, brother. I'm all in, as cool as I can get. But it was great. First duty station was at Barksdale Air Force Base. At the time, we had nuclear weapons there. We call PO1 resources. So we kept them in what's called a WSA, weapons storage area. So here I am, day one. I show up, and it's me and 70 plus defenders are looking at me, and it's go time. And
you're a first or you're a second lieutenant.
I was a second lieutenant.
This was after you did the recruiting.
So it was my second year. So I showed up, and I had not gone to school at the time.
So you hadn't been to the training.
I had not been to the training. So I show up. And assigned to a flight with another lieutenant who was training me. Then I went off to school, and school was in 2 phases at the time. So you did kind of your installation phase, which is like law enforcement and security. Then you go back and you do the expeditionary stuff, the air-based ground defense. Yeah. Then I came back and was a first lieutenant shortly after that.
So in your first duty station or first couple, what are some major memories that you have, or stories, or lessons learned as a young, what we call junior officer? I don't know if you call it that in the Air Force too, but you know, what are some things you learned during that time, or that you experienced too?
Yeah, I got in trouble a lot. No, just joking. So
I was like, here we go.
Yeah. We'll get into that. So definitely. So the good thing about our career field is lieutenants aren't allowed to wander aimlessly, right? You always have a senior NCO who is responsible for you. Right? And I had a lot, like Jesse Garza was probably one of my most memorable flight chiefs. He was an old school master sergeant. But they raise you. They raise lieutenants, and that's part of their responsibility. But I tell you, kind of like I started with the Citadel, and before that, I get ahead of myself sometimes. So, I'm this young, energetic guy, jumping fences to get into the web. So let's think, what sense does this make, right? So
you're jumping fences on a base,
so, right? Because we used to have to do, or they still do, what are called exercises. So every shift you're required to pull X number of exercises for the defenders to just ensure their proficiency, right? So whether it's an alarm or a penetration or whatever. So normally it's just it's simulated. You call over the radio, but not me, right? So. I think it's a good idea to start scaling fences, right? Yeah. So let's think about this. You got defenders in this, this storage area with guns that are trained to detect intruders. There's signs posted everywhere. It says deadly force is authorized, and here's me jumping these fences, right?
Because you're the guy that's running the scenario. That's
in my mind. Yeah, in my mind I am, right? So, but thank goodness nothing crazy happened. But it's just, again, Master Sergeant Carter, hey, LT, I get it.
Yeah.
Not a good idea, right? So again, me and another flight chief, a guy named Jay LaBar, great guy. He was a tech, then became a master, and we thought, right, we're gonna pull more exercise. It was a great day to commandeer some vehicles that were on the installation. So we had commandeered a 5-ton, right, back in the day, and we're driving around and we're pulling exercises, and guys are we're going crazy, right?
Yeah.
Well, we got the 5-ton stuck, and this is on night shift, right? So we got to get this out. So we commandeer a Humvee to get the 5-ton out, right? And Jay's like, hey, all right, just let the winch out. I didn't know anything about winches, right?
Yeah.
And you probably do, and I'm probably embarrassed now, but I let the winch all the way out, right? Yeah. So he's like, all right, we good. He has it hooked up. He's like, all right, T, back up. So I'm like, roger that. So I hit the gas and the cable on the winch pops, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because it was all the way out. There's no tension. And I forget, right? I'm probably going to get court-martialed for telling this. I'm still in. But Jay's like, LT, you got to go, right? We got it. You got to go.
Is that what he said? Yeah. No way. He's like, you're out of here, bro.
Yeah, in a good way. He's like, look, we're too deep here. You can't. I can survive this.
Okay.
You can't, right?
Yeah.
Right. So he's like, hey, just So he took, like senior NCOs do.
Yeah.
Took care of it, right?
Yeah.
But again, just getting ahead of myself. So
yeah.
Yeah, but I tell you, Barksdale was great, man. I did a lot. Oh, I'll tell you one more story.
Yeah.
Down to leadership and how you handle things. So we had, you had it in the Navy, the PRP program, Personnel Reliability Program. Now it's Personnel Reliability Assurance, right? Mm-hmm. Just your ability to be close, or can you be close to PO1 resources, right? Mm-hmm. It's all about protecting them. And so I get a call. The commander was John Kinsey. And I get a call to go up to the boss, which is never good, right? Well, it started with the call. It started with me going to the armory and not being able to get my weapon.
Uh-oh.
Right, you're on the DNA. I'm like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to go see the boss. Again, there's no emails. There's no texting. There's none of that, right? Mm-hmm. You show up to work. You go to the old man's office, right? Yeah. So I'm in the old man's office, and he's like, hey, sit down. I reported. Hey, sit down. Him, Tim Farrell, was the operations officer. And he proceeds to tell me that a significant number of the folks that were on my flight would not be returning to work because they got caught up in an Office of Special Investigations investigation for cocaine use.
What?
Right? And I'm like, exactly. That's my response, right? Dude. So now I'm sweating bullets. Like, I guess apparently they went to Mardi Gras and they were I was in New Orleans or in Louisiana.
Yeah.
And so the old man's like, "Did you know about this, sir?" Yeah. Right? No, but again, right? It's a leadership, right? For me is, because that's not a one-time thing. How is this going on? And you're not aware of it, and how long has it been going on? And were your folks really doing their job? So that was a wake-up call for me as a young lieutenant, right? To know my people, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not passing judgment on what they did, but I obviously was not in tune with my people,
right?
If that was occurring, right? So, but I was just terrified, right? I'm getting this talking to, but Colonel Kinsey was also very compassionate with me, saying, hey, as a leader, you're responsible for morale and welfare and good order and discipline, all these things. So, but then the second problem was, hey, JP, how are you going to guard those nuclear weapons when, like, you're right, your manpower is diminished? So, yeah, definitely a wake up call. But man, talk about tremendous. I'll say the foundation I had at Barksdale Air Force Base was great. That was I could not be more thankful to go to a base like that. It was a tough mission, long hours, but I tell you, it's helped me tremendously in the rest of my career, both there. But after that, I came to Charleston. That was my next assignment. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like I think you said Colonel, your commander at that time that gave you that talk, also understood that you were a young officer still trying to figure out how to be an officer, you know what I'm saying, or how to handle scenarios. And that sounds like a good leader to be in your path versus someone that's just going to rip you open, for things you're trying to learn.
Yeah, he could have done that many times, but now I'm wondering if that's why he sent me to Kuwait. So, that was my first deployment out of there too. Okay. Before deployments were deployments. That was in the 90s. So
did you go there before Charleston?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
So when I came back from Kuwait, back then we only deployed for 90 days, right? So now
really?
we think about, 6 months or year deployment, 90 days. It's like, I'm dying, but it was nothing. Yeah. So before I PCS to Charleston, I went to Kuwait, where I was at Al Jaber Air Base as the anti-terrorism force protection officer, which is great.
How was it out there for the time you were out there?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was kind of boring, right?
Nothing crazy happened.
No, nothing crazy happening. It was after Desert Storm, pre 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, that was my first deployment, first time really away, from the country, in uniform, other than like exercises and stuff. So, then I came to Charleston after that, so came back, got orders, and
you're like back to the Citadel area.
Yeah, I was pumped, dude. Back to my old stomping grounds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pumped.
And so when you came back here, what were you, a captain at that time?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah. So, no, I got promoted to captain shortly after I got to Charleston.
Okay.
Yep. So I came. It was at the time it was the 437th Security Forces Squadron. Now it's the 628s with the whole joint basing thing. But I was a resources and training officer there, so responsible for the money of the operational budget of the squadron, all our equipment, all our mobility and deployment stuff, and then of course training. So making sure all the defenders are trained. So I did that for about a year or so.
What was like an average day when you were in that role? What was kind of like your daily routine on average?
Yeah, a lot of meetings, right? A lot of meetings, right? Talking with the boss, right? The boss always wants to know what's going on with the budget.
Yeah.
At the time, we still had all our equipment. So Security Forces Career Field has gone back and forth with, does it maintain its mobility equipment at home station or do we centralize store it? So at the time, we had it at the squadron, so there's a lot of accountability for critical equipment and reporting on that.
We're talking about Humvees and...
no, we didn't have Humvees, but it's like night vision, comm equipment, tents. We had ATVs at the time.
Yeah.
All stored in those big ISU containers or big...
so if you guys deploy, you load a container on an aircraft and there's all your stuff. Basically.
Yeah, which we did do, and I'll get into that. But it's a daily, just a lot of meetings, right?
Yeah.
Going, and creating and going over training schedules because, defenders are required to have X number of training hours and all that. So just doing a lot of coordination with that. Of course, I have a whole team that did it, but it's being there involved and providing the oversight. Yeah, it was
a lot of management of all the intricate details that your individual airmen need to do. You're kind of big picture managing that stuff daily.
Yeah, exactly. And that was really my first introduction to budgeting, right? Like this is the squadron's budget and this is how you manage it, right? Before I was kind of oblivious to that, which again, right, as in the DOD, everyone wants to know, end of year fallout, right? So with the guys, the end of September going in October, spending money, right? Because you never, no matter what you buy, you can't you got to spend every penny that you have, even with fallout money, or you won't get that amount of money next year.
Right.
But just taught me a lot. But yeah, that was just a lot of oversight.
Yeah.
And but definitely very different than what I did at Barksdale. You know, I'm still a young guy.
Mm-hmm.
I want action, right? I
Yeah.
want to be going to the armory, drawing my gun. I
Yeah.
want to be out there with the guys. But developmentally, you know, just certainly just a valuable experience. But
Mm-hmm.
I got deployed again from that position.
So where'd you go this time?
Went to Albania. Yeah, so you probably like I'm old. I know you guys like this dude's old. So this was back kind of after the whole Allied force thing, you know, Slobodan Milosevic and, you know, all the ethnic cleansing with the ethnic Albanians. So we went to Rennes International Airport in Albania on a humanitarian mission. So it was the ethnic Albanians were fleeing back. It's kind of a refugee crisis there. We were there to ensure that we'd set up refugee camps. A lot of logistic support, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bringing in humanitarian aid and relief there. But that was my first bare base deployment. This is a true story. Your chickens reminded me this is when we landed, you know, it took a 44-man team from Charleston to Albania. So we stopped in Germany, switched planes, stayed for like a day or so. Then we flew right in.
Yeah.
And, you know, you hear about these things, you train for them, but, my last deployment was in Kuwait, and that was like built up, and I had my own room, and we land on this airfield, and there's like goats and chickens running around. And
you hit any with the plane on the way in?
I don't know.
Don't know?
I don't know, but I'm thinking, what is this, right? I'm looking
Yeah.
around. Where's billeting? There's no golf courses. There's none of that, right? Where's the gym?
Air Force, we need that golf course.
Bro, there was no, literally, there was no bat. There was nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bare base, dude.
Yeah.
You know, a true story, right?
Just a dirt airstrip, basically.
It was an international airport,
okay.
but it wasn't really operational, and it was, you know, Eastern Europe. I guess it's Eastern Europe, right? At the time, just not as maybe developed as the U.S., but yeah, it was insane. So you know, we're flying these folks in, and you know, finally engineers and services come in, and they're building the old school toilet, like where they burn, you know, the stuff. It was insane.
Dang.
You know, living in tents, digging in, building up DFPs, you know, putting guys in elevated positions for Overwatch. Yeah, it was insane. I was like, whoa, we're not in Charleston anymore, boys, right? But again, right? I mean, as terrible as we thought it was then, I tell you, that's probably, in terms of deployments, right? The one that probably one of the most memorable, right? We're doing convoy ops to the port, you know, as the ships would come in and unload humanitarian aid. Then we're bringing them to the refugee camps.
Oh, yeah.
And they just walking around the camps, right? You know, seeing, that was probably my first introduction to, you know, just true crisis, right? And just, you know, seeing these families in these tents and these kids running around, and man, it was just insanity, right?
Yeah.
Seeing that, I had this, I mean, it really helped me have an appreciation for this country,
Absolutely.
right? What we have here,
Yeah.
and the stability we have. I mean, you know, and then I'll never forget it. This child got scalded with hot, you know, because they're cooking, and this child got scalded. You know, you had this mom running to us, you know, crying with her baby, right? Thank goodness we had, oddly enough, had some Navy folks with me. I had a Navy, 2 Navy dog handlers with us, but you know, we had docs and medics able to hand it. But I'm like, whoa, this is, talk about time to grow up as a young man. It was insane.
Well, especially when you're exposed to a country that's not as good as this country, you know, and then your whole life you've kind of used to what we're used to here. You go over there and you see some things, and you're like, dude, nobody even knows this is going on.
Nobody,
you know,
because
what you were telling that story made me think of my second deployment. I was the detachment OIC for Naval Beach Group, and basically we were with MU and basically an amphibious ready group. But we did an exercise in Djibouti, and we landed our LCACs in Djibouti, which is the hovercraft that takes Marines from ship to shore. And I'll never forget, you land on that beach, man. There's human poop flying in the air from the hovercraft, just staying above the ground, because people are living on the beach, just pooping all over it, peeing, you know. They're living, it's like horrible living. Yeah. You know, they got some camels out there that are in your way, and you got to like get them out of the way so you can land the hovercraft and all this, you know, so going back to the chicken and goat thing. But just when you see that and you're exposed to that, you're like, oh my gosh, dude. Like, we are so fortunate to be where we're at, and nobody knows this is going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
So kind of made me think about that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I tell you, not to get nerdy or overly patriotic, but I tell you, my early years, or just my entire military career, I'm so thankful for this country, and, as things ebb and flow and, the economy gets bad and all these things, I'm still appreciative. There's no other place, on this planet that I want to be other than here. And that's why, when you talk about, the American-made products and supporting the I'm all in, dude, because this, you and I have seen it. We have seen, tragedy and crisis and, failing economies and corruption and crime and unsanitary living conditions. That ain't happening in West Ashley, right? So I'm very, very, very thankful and appreciative for this country.
How long were you on that deployment for?
Yeah, it was just over 90 days.
90 days.
Yeah, just over 90 days. And sometime, man, I'll show you some pictures and
I'd
stuff.
like to see them.
Yeah, we had our little the area that we called it the Battery, right? Because team from Charleston, so like our CP and all that area, we called it the Battery. So,
absolutely.
But I tell you, the team, because that's another interesting. It was defenders. We've never, like the Army, right? We've always been co-ed, we'll say, right?
Yeah.
Men and women, but I tell you, the bond between the defenders that were there, I mean, folks coming together, living in cramped quarters and, going without showers and stuff. I never saw morale sink.
Yeah.
They just kept each other motivated. It was awesome. And even to this day, I mean, there's folks from that deployment. We still talk, but actually, Rick Gephardt, who's a captain now at Somerville Police Department. Nice. Rick was there with me, and to this day, we still talk about it. I mean, we're still good friends.
Yeah. From
that bonding experience, man, it was insane.
Yeah, those types of things do create a bond like nothing else can.
Yeah,
going through that together for sure.
The suck, right? The suck.
Absolutely. Well, what were the Navy dog handlers? Were they apprehension dogs or just detection dogs?
Yeah,
dogs
detection.
Over there?
Yeah. Bomb dogs.
Or for bombs that might be coming
dogs.
in.
Yeah, and that was, I was a dog handler at the sheriff's office for a while, but that really, we'd had Air Force dogs. I'd worked with them, but I didn't have a lot of interaction with our dogs as a lieutenant and even as a captain. But that was the first time that I had deployed and really seen dogs employed, if that's the right word. And these MAs, I'll never forget it, how intrigued I was with article searches, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where they'd show me, they'd throw a random thing and then their dogs would go find it. And I was like, man, I want to be a dog handler, right?
Yeah.
Officers aren't dog handlers, but
yeah,
but I think, that kind of carried with me, right? As I got out and eventually got into dog handling was with those two MAs that were with us. I mean, their dogs were legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, legit. Yeah, two shepherds, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And that what you just said about officers not being dog handlers just made me think, officers don't get the cool jobs in the military, man.
Yeah, they don't tell you that when you
don't tell you that until you're already in it,
That's right. Here's your paperwork. Have at it.
So if anybody's thinking about joining and you want to do a cool job, go talk about that before you sign the papers to do other things. I know guys that I was at the Citadel with and they enlisted so they could do some of the things that officers can't do, so definitely you got to look at it that perspective too. I had someone many years ago tell me that I needed to talk their child, I'm not going to say anything, but I needed to talk their child into going officer versus enlisted. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with being enlisted, and enlisted get the cooler jobs, you know what I'm saying? So I ain't going to say nothing to them,
Yeah, I stay away from those talks. You're like, hey, I can't definitively say that.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah. Be a warrant officer, right?
There
That's
you
the
go.
ticket,
There you
right?
go.
Best of both worlds.
Dude, I remember the first warrant officer I ever saw. Like that dude, instant respect.
Yeah.
Because he's a warrant officer, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
Those guys have been through it. So anyway, so you get back from that deployment. What happened after you got back from there?
Yeah, got back from that deployment. Went over and became the operations officer in the squadron. So
in Charleston still?
Yeah, in Charleston, back at the 437th. So the difference is the operations officer is responsible for the day-to-day operations, so the security, the law enforcement, everything that happens on the base. The operations officer, the S3 shop, right, is responsible for that. So it was awesome, right? You know, I had the folks out there that were, guarding the base. Worked for me, the team, right? The S3 team, the operations officer team. It was great, but I still, at that time, again, coming off that deployment, I got a little, again, that same taste that I had as a shift commander, right? Of being out there, going outside the wire, doing patrols, being there with the guys. And I was like, man, as thankful as I am for my career, I just I don't think I was satisfied, right? I was young. I wanted excitement. I wanted to, I didn't want to be in meetings. I didn't want to be in the office, which I think every 20-some-year-old person experiences, in the military. So I started pursuing opportunities in federal law enforcement, right? So I said, I started to question if I wanted to stay in the military.
Mm-hmm. You were a major as an operations
officer?
No,
I was a captain.
Okay,
Yeah, I was still a captain.
Spot.
So this was...
This is on a staff, right?
Yeah, at the squadron. Yeah. So exactly, I'm a squadron staff officer.
So real quick for the listener, because I don't want to get it too complicated for them, but in the military, there's generally a staff, and that staff has several what we call subcommands that they're responsible for, and the staff has like admin. So the 1 code or the S1 or the N1 in the Navy would be admin, right? If I'm remembering correctly. S2 or N2 would be intel. S3 or N3 would be operations. S4, N4 supply, if I'm not mistaken. And it just goes from there, right? So I think S6 or N6 is communications, if I'm not mistaken.
5 is plans.
So
no, you're right.
You have all these codes
to the 3.
Right. So you have like I don't know who's in charge of a squadron for you guys, or that squadron. Was
squadron commander.
Is it a general?
No, it's a major or lieutenant colonel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like one of the squadrons that I was attached to, the 06 is, and so like a colonel, right?
Okay.
That's the guy that's the, I forgot what you call it, but squadron commander or whatever. Yeah. And then everybody else underneath that, and each code is a different ranking officer depending on the size of that squadron, I guess. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I'm trying not to get it too complicated for the listener, but basically you're the S3.
Yes,
and then the subcommands, like if you have 4 subcommands, so commands that are working for your commander, their operations officer is directly coordinating with you, but you're also directly coordinating with that executive officer or commanding officer, depending on the relationships there, right?
Yeah, so from the Air Force, we have flights, which is kind of the lowest element that are formally recognized, right? You have squad, but flights, then squadron, then group, then wing. So I'm sitting... at the squadron, which is, above the flights, which are, the folks out there executing the mission, but below the group. So our group commander would be an 06 equivalent.
Okay.
And he would have, X number of squadrons, right? So I'm sitting at the squadron level.
Now your flight, is that 1 aircraft, or is it a certain number of people? Just so listener,
I'm sorry.
Me too. I'm confused about what a flight is.
Apologies. So
no, you're good.
In the Air Force, we'll break it down into 2 kind of groups. So you have the aviators, then you have what we'll call support, right? Or agile combat support, as we call it now. So you're right. So for the aviators, like a flight means something completely different. X number of aircraft will be in the flight. Okay. But for agile combat support, which is really people and equipment, a flight it's an organizational group. So, typically 50 plus people maybe in a flight, right?
Okay,
so that's the smallest recognized. So
I got you.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, everything I talk about is non-aviation. So if you want to talk aviation, you got to have my brother come because I don't talk. So so we have X number of flights underneath the S3 and the squadron they're out there executing. So I'm the S3 I'm thinking, hey, I just want to do something a little more exciting, start pursuing a career in federal law enforcement, Secret Service, DEA, FBI, ATF, and all these things. I am, getting a lot of traction in the Secret Service process and get a conditional offer of employment. Made through the polygraph, the interviews, and all that, and I'm excited, right? I'm going to guard the president, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking,
legit,
right?
Dude.
Kevin Costner, Whitney Houston. I think that's another movie, right? That's me, right?
Yeah.
And so I go do my physical, and they say, hey, you have some issues in your ear, right? Your hearing levels don't meet the baseline standard for entry. And I'm thinking, that's weird, right? Air Force never said anything.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I was still in, so I go see a number of specialists, and it turned to find out I had significant hearing loss, but not as a result of noise exposure. It's a disease called otosclerosis.
Really?
Where the bones inside the ear, the ossicles, they fuse together so they don't vibrate to conduct noise. And I hope you don't have all your fact checkers are probably like, you said that wrong, that's wrong. All I know is checks. I can't hear, right? I can't hear.
Dang.
And so
you couldn't tell until that happened.
Had no idea.
You're not aware of it.
Not aware of it.
Yeah.
So I have a couple surgeries. At the time, we had the Navy hospital right here,
Yeah.
and they had an ENT specialist. Had a couple surgeries, and it just didn't work out, right? So I that was done.
Yeah.
Air Force says, "Hey, we got a deal for you? We're going to send you overseas for a year." And I'm like, if I do that, then I get, as you know, you get another active duty service commitment coming back. I wanted to pursue this whole thing with getting my ear fixed, so I 7-day opted. I took a leap of faith, hit the button, and said, no, I'm not going to do it. So 7-day opt, right? You have 7 days, and you to take the assignment or not, and then you're out essentially. So
dang.
Yeah, so I'm getting
That's
out.
not a thing anymore. I don't.
I don't know what they do now.
That's crazy. That's a fast turnaround, dude.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
This was pre 9/11, so it was in 2000. So Sheriff Al Cannon, the former, he at that time the sheriff's office provided law enforcement service on the base because of the jurisdiction. The Air Force had no jurisdiction over civilians, is the simplest way to put it. So we had to use local law enforcement.
So you had to have them embedded with you guys.
Yeah, they would just respond. Yeah, but always a lot of meetings. We previously used North Charleston. There was, some concerns by wing leadership. I won't go into that, but I knew some of the guys from the sheriff's office just from working out at the gym. A couple of them worked out there, and so I introduced my boss to the leadership at the sheriff's office. We did a memorandum of agreement, so the sheriff's office started providing services there. Yeah. But Al Cannon was also, let me back up. Al Cannon was a reserve Air Force 06. He was an OSI agent.
Really?
And Al Cannon was in Albania as well, right? So
no way,
kind of, right?
Holy cow.
Yeah, so, not that we had a relationship, but there's, the sheriff is there, so just made sense. And, I'll be thankful to Al Cannon and Chief Ernie Sweat to this day, because I told them my situation, that I'm getting out, didn't have a job, didn't know what to do. I'd had some other I was applying for the Highway Patrol, Virginia State Police, and they gave me a job, right? He had me come down and interview with at the time, the assistant sheriff, and he gave me a job. Yeah. And at that time at the sheriff's office, not to make this about the sheriff's office, they would only hire maybe 5 people a year. Oh, really? That was the place to work. So there was they're hiring, they only hired a couple folks a year because folks weren't leaving. Their attrition wasn't very high, and
they made a spot for you.
They made a spot, right? Dude, and gave me an opportunity. So I'm forever thankful and loyal to Al Cannon and the sheriff's office as a whole, right? They took a chance on an unknown. And so that's why I went to work, and I had the conversation with them saying this is probably going to be temporary, right? I'm going to be a federal agent, Sheriff probably rolled his eyes at the time, like, yeah, okay, everyone says that. But when I got there, right, and part of it, I'm a loyal person. Yeah. I never looked at federal law. The day I started there, I never looked at federal law enforcement again, right? I was just so thankful to have that job. But then I joined the reserve as well, right? So
Air Force Reserve.
Air Force Reserve, I'm sorry. So I went across the street to the 315th, and full disclosure, that was a financial decision. That wasn't a decision of patriotism at all. I'm not gonna blow that smoke, but going from being a captain, what an 03 makes. Yeah, that's pretty good money. Oh, yeah. And then I went to being a deputy sheriff. I think I started out at $28,000 a year. So that was a pretty significant pay cut. Yeah. And it was okay to have kids and all that, but I knew, right? I knew enough about numbers and income, and I knew what car I had. I knew what my rent was.
You learned the budgeting from your job.
From my job. Yeah, when I was before. Yeah, look, you are paying attention. Yeah, right. So I knew budgeting.
That lesson paid off.
Yeah, that's right. And my dad is really good with numbers, and he's always beat down. So it was a financial decision for me. Yeah. So I went to the 315th, and then, as you know, a couple months later, 9/11 happens, right? So I had just gotten out of the academy. I just finished my FTI training. I was on my own, and I'll never.
In patrol?
Yeah, I was on patrol working down in Hollywood, Ravenel. That's where I started. I'll never forget. I think I was on. We worked 8-hour shifts at the time. I was on probably swings, right? Yeah. And I remember getting a call in the morning from Jerry Henning. He was our full timer at the unit, and a number of others saying, "Hey, the planes just hit the towers." I'm like, "What?" I thought it was like War of the World. I thought it was a spoof, right? Oh, yeah. I remember watching it on TV, but then that just took my life in a completely different direction, right? That's an absolute tragedy, but the Security Forces career field, we did 100% mobilization. So every reservist, individual mobilization augmentee, anybody, any part-timer.
Immediately? Just let's go.
Yeah. So over the course of about 2 months, first they recalled just everyone that was in assigned billet. And then I was in overage at the time. Then they did 100%. Everyone that could essentially carry a weapon, got mobilized. So I was got mobilized, went back to my old squadron, the 437th.
Nice.
Was work because we were in FPCon Delta at the time. Security everywhere. So I was like the night shift battle captain, which I love because I was with the folks that I had just worked with a couple months prior.
Yeah.
And then it got sent overseas. And you're probably thinking, did you go to Afghanistan? Did you go to... No.
Where'd you go?
Germany.
I was going to say Germany.
Germany,
I was going to guess.
Yeah, Germany.
They're putting a lot of people in Germany to stage them.
Yeah, they did. But as a young guy, I'm thinking...
You're ready for the fight.
Yeah, I'm like, wait, where I'm supposed to go, right?
Yeah.
But I went to Germany and got assigned to a major command staff. So... as I explained, the major commands sit over a bunch of wings. So they have a bunch of bases. And I got assigned to the Anti-Terrorism Force Protection Office on the USAF staff, which was awesome, right? I'm over there.
What was that like showing up there? Everything's on high alert.
Yeah, it was overwhelming. I had never served on a staff at that level, right? So all my experience had been at the squadron. But again, embraced by senior NCOs, Dan Koenig, a lot of great guys.
Yeah.
They just embraced me and said, hey, Cap, let's go, right? It's go time, right?
Is that staff commander a general at this point?
He was in 06.
06?
Yeah,
okay.
he was in 06 at the time.
So you're starting to work with the bigger picture guys.
Exactly, right. Exactly, yeah.
Exposed.
Right. That direct link to the 06.
Right.
So we're going around, we're doing anti-terrorism we're doing assessments of all USAFs, so U.S. Air Force, Europe, all their installations across Europe. We're doing the assessments to make sure, that they, if they're attacked, that they can defend it. So we're doing that. Doing that for a couple months, and then I get another call back from Air Mobility Command, which is back, up at Scott, and they say, hey, Prindle, you're a police officer, right? And, I'd only been a police officer for like a month, but I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm a vet, right?
Yeah,
And they said, hey, well, we need you. We're putting together a team of folks that have law enforcement and corrections experience. And we're going to start bringing we'll call them detainees out of Afghanistan to Guantanamo Bay.
Oh, dang, dude.
Yeah. So I was like, go time. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm all in, right? So, and it was mostly reservists and guardsmen that were doing that mission. So I get sent to Incirlik Air Base, Turkey, where I was the stage manager for that. So it's me and it was a couple pilots, but all things security and all that stuff was what fell on me, right? And I worked for an 06 too.
Okay.
But I went there, and that talk about fascinating. So we had to figure it out on the fly. How do we do that? But a bunch of smart guys. Good friend of mine, Andy Frankel, he was a year behind me, and oddly enough, I was his field training officer when he was fellow police officer down at Berkeley. He was one of those guys that played a pivotal role. But we're literally figuring out how do we transport the detainees on the aircraft, right? Do we use C-17s? Do we use 141s? Do we use still have the 141 in the inventory? Do you use 130s? And there's a lot of smart guys. Again, you're figuring out, right? How do we secure them, right?
Yeah.
How do we do small things like feed them? How do we get them to the bathroom?
They don't need food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right,
I know you guys are thinking that, but you had to make sure that you take care of it. You have to.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's definitely the way you feel like, hey, a lot of people have died.
Yeah.
But we figured it out on the fly, right?
Yeah.
Then we started running what we called the circuit. The tails would come generally out of McGuire, come to Incirlik, then they'd go into Afghanistan, come back to Incirlik, we'd cross load, then we'd take them to Guantanamo Bay. So we were primarily using C-17s in 141. So, the C-17 is like essentially a big ass 130. So it's got the size, capacity of an old school 141, probably a little larger, but it's got the tactical ability of a 130 where it can get into any airfield. But if I tell you a funny story about that, and to all the pilots, you'll just have to bear. So pilots take a lot of pride in their thing, right? So the 141 guys, they wanted in the fight, right? Hey, we get this airplane in here and they're doing the airfield assessments and the length of runway, but that's not my lane.
Yeah.
So they decide, well, we're going to try to take a 141 into, I think, the Bagram. They went to Bagram. For the sake of the podcast, we'll say Bagram. Fact checkers, if I'm wrong, let me know. But I'm thinking, they say, hey, Prindle, you want to go? No, I'm good.
Yeah.
Right? I'm good. But my boss, Colonel Bronwitz, is like, I'm going, right? He's an Army guy. He's like, I'm going, I'm whole, and he was a rotor guy. So a bunch of can say they're going, right? Because they want to get boots on ground. They want to say, I touched the earth.
Yeah.
I'm good, right? I know I'll just keep doing the admin stuff here, taking care of the,
Yeah.
So they fly that 141 there and break it. Yeah, they're stuck for like 5 days.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and of course these guys, right? They're so confident. They had day packs, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. So you got a 141 broken on this airfield. You don't have the maintain. You can't fix it.
You got to bring maintenance in.
Got to bring maintenance in. Dude. We cause that, right? Well, they cause that. So I'll never forget the look on my boss's face when he finally made it back. I mean, full beard. He is mad. He is mad at the world, right? And I'm looking at it, again, back to my cynical, smart ass kind of ways. I'm like, well, sir, told you so. Yeah, so we never used 141s again after that. It was strictly C-17s. They can
boss
get in
didn't like
get
him
out.
after that.
No.
The boss said these things are going to break down.
That's right. Yeah, he wanted no more 141s after that. But we used 141s to take them from Incirlik to Gitmo. They worked fine because they didn't have to land on short, dirty runway. So, but that was fascinating, and I did that for several. Even after my mobilization ended, I got called back a few times to do that mission there, which is absolutely fascinating. Just the number of folks, and I got to see all the manifests, and I was out there on the flight line.
You saw these guys.
So and you saw the bad, the bad ones, right?
What was their attitudes as you were moving them, from one to the other? Are they like just sitting there?
Yeah, they were pretty. Yeah, what their attitudes weren't bad. Of course, they were. They were detained. They had chains on, and at the time we were still, right, wrong, or indifferent. We were still using devices where they couldn't see where they were, so we had the goggles and stuff. So their ability, there was occasionally on the plane, right? Mm-hmm. You would get some, we'll call attitude for lack of a better term. Yeah. Frustration. We'll say some frustration on their part, but it was always handled well, right? But I think at the time, because you got to think they had been detained in the various FOBs in Afghanistan for a while before all the biometrics were done, the identification, the classification, and those conditions were terrible. Yeah. So they were probably just thankful that they were leaving there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can only imagine there, it was probably confusing. Why am I in an airplane, right? And what's going on. But we moved a lot of folks, right? And it's interesting now to see, years later as we do repatriation and stuff like that. I'm like, man, that was many years ago that we were doing that. But did that a couple, then demobed, and it was back to civilian life, start my police career.
So you went from that back into the police force?
Yep, back into the police force,
One thing about detainees is my first deployment, we were doing counter narcotics. So we would capture these, like I told you, the leadette shooting out the engines. We'd capture the vessel, and me being part of the boarding team, I'd be in participating in that. But we'd bring them back to our ship. Our ship's a small ship. We don't have extra space, so where'd we decide to put these guys? on the skin of the ship, right on the weather deck. Oh yeah,
just sitting them down outside.
We'd chain them to the side of the ship, and we'd have a little 5-gallon bucket out there, that we would walk them to, and they could do their business, and we'd walk them back, chain them back. But whenever I would be officer the deck of the ship, basically the one in charge of the ship, I'd be steering the ship into some sea states where they'd get a little Mother Nature showering going on, what I'm saying? But the crazy thing about that is we would turn them over to like a host nation. Like we'd get in close to a host nation, we'd turn them over, and then we'd capture the same guy out there like a month later.
Doing it again.
And counter narcotics, the drug trade is just totally different.
Is that because like corruption in those governments?
Yeah. They go back to the host nation. And be like, okay, they give them money. They get these guys to be back out there doing it again. We'd capture them again. I remember dudes smiling at me, laughing at me. Because it's like, oh, you got me again.
Yeah, they were high five, like, Chad, what's up, bro? Good to see you.
I'm like, you're going back on that weather deck in a chain, bro. When I'm on watch, you're going into this. A little bit different than what you were doing, but still, the detainee world is crazy.
It is crazy.
Or when you're dealing with guys from other countries and all that, especially with how you were doing, a lot more sensitive in that case because you're talking about high-profile guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, very interesting world to be in, dealing with all that, Plus, you got more people you're responsible for. You have to take care of them.
Yeah.
You have to take care of them. If something happens to these guys and you're responsible for them, the governments are coming down on you, you're going to be, in trouble. What I'm saying?
Yeah, no, you're at what they call it, like the strategic airman, right? You don't want to be that guy that sets off some sort of international incident, right or wrong. Yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
You may want to be in the history books, but not for that.
Absolutely, man. So you go back into law enforcement. You're back in Charleston.
Back in Charleston.
What's going on at this point?
Yeah, back on patrol, working patrol. I stay in, I got mobilized again, so I'm in patrol.
Yeah.
And this one was my own doing, right?
Okay.
So going back to that whole, mobilization, went to Germany, went to Turkey, did the detainee movements, right? So still the war's going on, right? And guys are, going, and now we're right in Afghanistan, in Iraq.
Yeah, you want the action. You're ready.
Right? I feel this calling, right?
Yeah.
So my dad at the time was a civilian. So my dad retired from the Air Force. I'm sorry, from the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Bounced around, did a couple things, and then, he got drawn back into civil service. So my dad's a civil servant on the Air Combat Command staff at Langley Air Force Base, right? So he's doing numbers, print money. So my dad is doing, but he's doing the POM for ACC. Again, my dad's brilliant with budgets and money, and so he's doing that. And my dad and I are very, very close. We have a very close relationship.
Mm-hmm.
He's larger than life to me, and I'm talking to him, and hey, Dad, what do you think? And he's like, well, I mean, you want to go to Iraq, or what do you? I said, I feel like this is my nation's war, right? This is my generation's war,
right?
As a security forces officer, I just feel compelled to go. And he's like, okay. So my dad calls me back. He's like, it's probably a couple days later.
He got something for you.
He's like, you ready? I'm ready for what, Dad? You said you wanted to go. I said, what are you talking about? I was like, I talked to the A4 guys. You ready? I said, yeah. So sure enough, right? The ACC had a deployment that they couldn't fill. They had an officer fall out. They need an officer to go. My dad said, hey, my son's security forces officer. They talked to the reserve. Next thing you know, mobilization, and I'm going, right?
Nice.
And now I'm like, well, hold on. What's the mission, right? Right now it's real.
Yeah.
But the mission was supposed to be, and part of the reason it came up was law and order, right?
Oh.
You're going to go to a location in Iraq, Diamondback and Perez, and you're going to do law and order. So police stuff on the installation. You're going to be the guy that everyone hates, just writing parking tickets and speeding tickets. I was like, okay, that's what I do. I feel very, very comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Let's do it, right?
Yeah.
So I get mobilized. I link up with some active duty guys, but namely National Guard guys out of Tennessee and Iowa. So folks I've never served with. So we go to Fort Carson down in Colorado. We do the 1 month spin up, get ready, and then we go and we head over to Mosul, Iraq. Report in. We're working for an Army battalion.
What year is this?
This was in 05.
05?
Yeah, end of 05. So it was at the 05 through 06 that I was there. And report in to the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel, Army type, hey, Jeff Prindle here reporting as ordered, and he's like, hey, okay, all right, is your team ready to go? Yes, sir, ready to go, just let us know. Because there was an Air Force detachment that was there that was supposed to rip out, and he goes, okay, we're going to get your vehicles together and be prepared to move out within 48 hours. I said, move out where, sir? He goes, yeah, you're going up on the border by Kyrgyzstan. I said, negative, sir. I'm the law enforcement guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm the ticket guy.
Yeah.
He goes, no, you're not the ticket guy. You're the guy that's going up on the Kyrgyzstan border to train Iraqi police.
What?
Yeah, that's what I said, sir. Right? And he's like, yeah, absolutely, have your team ready, right? So go back, tell the team, hey, Frago, we're going up to it was called the MPSA, Missoula Public Safety Academy. We're going to be responsible for force protection, right, security of that installation. And we're going to work with the contractors there to train Iraqi police, right?
Oh,
so scrambling on the fly, right? Figuring out who are the smart guys, right? And like, Chief Ron Hartley, a great friend to this day. At the time he was Tech Sergeant Hartley, thank goodness came from a law enforcement training background, right? Sergeant Finney, it came from the Army, so he knew how to work on these vehicles, right? It goes back to what you learn like in leadership day one, right? Knowing your people. And when John Kinsey said, hey, you need to know your people, right? At least I was, figuring out who had the skills to make this happen and start making plans. All right, you're going to lead training. All right, you're going to be the vehicle guy, right? I need a commo guy. Hey, sir, I was an Army, right? That's a good thing about the National Guard. A lot of these guys come from other services, so they have these experience. Okay, yeah, Sergeant Davis, you're the convoy lead dude, right? You're the commo guy, right? So start figuring it out. I had a guy named Joe Whalen, who's a good friend of mine. He was my XO, my number 2, Army guy, prior Army guy. He was an active duty guy. Knew him, he had a couple other active. They knew physical security inside and out. Yeah. So we had the team to do it. Yeah. We loaded up. We broke wire, and they took us out to the public safety, right? And I'm thinking, talk about alone and afraid out here, right? Yeah. But we're in it, right? I'll never forget, man. We're driving out there, and we're passengers at the time, and I hear boom. I'm freaking out, and the guys are talking on the radio, and I'm like, "What was that?" Right? Yeah. Somebody had thrown, the old hand grenades, right, from an overpass. Had thrown it at the movement. I was like, "Oh man, why did I tell my dad I wanted to do this?" Right? So. But we get out there, and we rip out. We're replacing an Army MP company that was out there, and we fall in on all their equipment. We're figuring out, man, how do we qualify in air quotes on 50 cals and Mark 19s, because they had Mark 19s on the roof. And we had 50 cals on all the gun trucks. So we're figuring it out. But the NCOs, man, they're making it happen. They're like, hey, sir, we got it, right? We're making it happen. So so then we fall in, we take over security there. Ton of improvements, man, but we start ripping in classes of Iraqi candidates, right? Which is a whole crazy thing. You're doing biometrics on these guys, figuring out, no, you're not supposed to be here. Then you're calling other folks to grab them.
Because you're worried about terrorists infiltrating these guys, because they did not want you training these guys.
Exactly.
Right? They were not happy about it.
Exactly.
Right?
100%.
Big security risk to everybody there.
And plus, then we're screening, but we're also taking biometrics on every student. So we have them in that biometrics database. So in the event, say 3 months ago, there was prior to that, maybe there was an IED and they got some fingerprints off of it. We're now able to match folks, right? And the secret squirrel people can come in and snatch them. But the other interesting thing was there was tension up there, because we're on the Kurdistan border, and the Kurds have very, very strong beliefs, and there's a lot of atrocities that were committed with the Kurds. So we're just south of Kurdistan. So we have a Kurdish security force that is there with us as well, that also does security on the perimeter. So you got us, you got the Kurds, but coming through the academy, you got Shias, you got Sunni, right? So there's a lot of tension, right? So then it gets into this whole, how do we keep everyone getting along, right? And there was a couple incidents where, things, guns are pointed at each other, and you're trying to defuse the situation, but fortunately, no serious incidents.
Can you give us an example of one thing that happened where some guys got a little frustrated or upset with each other?
Yeah, it starts with talking, right? So you got the Kurdish security guys, who are awesome, by the way. I don't know if you ever had a chance to deploy with the Kurds. They are all in. They're lions, right?
I've heard they're pretty hardcore.
They are very. And I'll tell you a story, which is probably gonna get me court-martialed, but I will tell you the story. I'm almost at retirement age. I'll risk it. But
you're good to go.
Yeah, it's just it starts with verbal back and forth. Then it becomes a physical altercation. Then it becomes guns pointed at one another, right? Then it becomes this historical, you did this, and then it's me and my guys like, hey, this isn't the time and the place for it. Yeah. And it gets diffused, but there's just tension. And the Kurds, they were all about keeping the Americans safe. Maybe not as dedicated about some of the students that were there, right? Oh, yeah. And the staff, right? That were there. And crazy things would happen, right? They had Glocks, and you give them bullets, and
Mm-hmm.
They'd go out on leave. These are the students, and they'd come back. I don't have my gun. Well, where's your gun? I don't have my bullets, right? They'd either sell it or it was getting taken from them, right? So it was always this craziness. But we had, back to the Kurds.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the Kurds are amazing to work with.
Yeah.
So my team and I pretty regularly, so we were probably, I'd say 15 or so miles from the base. So when we'd have to go back to the base for meetings or, right, because we were completely independent. We made our own food. We did it. So we'd have to go back to get food, or we have to get ammunition, or we'd have to go to meetings, get medical care, even things like mail. We would always have to go drive from the MPSA to Diamondback and Merez to do that. So we were probably breaking wire at a minimum 3 times a week. We'd break wire. But the TTPs at the time is anytime you were circulating the battle space, if you rolled up on a suspected IED, didn't matter who you were. If you were cops, cooks, engineers, you had to hold it, right, until you got there. So we're coming back in and, make a left to go into the main road to go to the MPSA. And one of the guys is like, hey, sir, it comes over the radio, hey, suspected device here. So we got to hold it, right? So we set up the cordon, we're holding it. We call it in and we're waiting, for the Army engineers to get there. And at the intersection, there's like these apartments, kind of high-rise things, and we had taken mortars from there before onto the camp. They love shooting mortars onto the camp. And they generally didn't hit anything, but it was a nuisance, right?
Harassing.
So it's just harassing.
Keep your head down, keep you on your toes.
Yeah, and they knew the schedule, right? Because the students or whoever would give it to them. So they liked to before we'd have a parade or graduation, they drop mortars, or at night they drop mortars to keep us up. But so we're sitting there, so we knew that there's, potential, but we're just kind of smoking and joking at this point. And we started taking some kind of harassment fire, but we're behind armor, right? Yeah. So you hear it and like, oh, this is uncomfortable, but armor's pretty good. Yeah. And the vehicle in front of me, I never forget, the vehicle in front of me was, I talked about Texas Sergeant Davis at the time. I remember seeing this like trail out of the corner of my eye, like this thing. And I'm looking at it and it's like it's slow motion. It's like this smoke trail. And then I turn and see his vehicle and just rocks it. They shot an RPG. Yeah, hit his vehicle in the back wheel well, right?
It was right in front of you.
Right in front of me, right? And thank goodness it was what we think was probably an anti-personnel RPG. So it rocked the Humvee, blew out the tire. But those dudes are like, oh, what was that, right? So my gunner, he's going crazy, and I say going crazy, he's going crazy, right? Yeah. And everyone is. And you're trying to calm that down. Yeah. So I pushed them out. Say, hey, man, go. You can't stay, right? You if you can make it back. So they went back, and the harassing fire is it's picking up, right? But again, it's hitting armor. Gunners are doing what they can do, right? But you can be very mindful because it's a populated area, so you can't go crazy, right? And I say, thank goodness, my 50 jammed, right? Because that would have just been destructive. But anyway. Yeah. So I'm getting a little tense here, right? Yeah. I'm not liking this situation again. I'm like, Dad, why did you sign me up for this? Because I forgot that I asked for it. And so I look down, I see like these people like marching down the roadway.
The Kurds.
Dude. I'm looking, and I'm like, that's the Kurds, right? So the Kurds come, and they I say walk, they ran from the MPSA because when the vehicle got back, they said, hey, this is what happened. Yeah. So the Kurds come in, and the guy's name was Major Abdullah, and Abdullah. Yeah. He's he's just standing out in the road, and he's directing his guys. I'm behind armor, dude. Yeah. And he's looking, he's pointing at me, right? And so now I'm like, oh. Yeah. I got to go talk to him. Yeah. So I did it. I didn't want to do it, but I knew if I didn't do it, there'd be no credibility. So I go out there, and I'm terrified, dude.
You're acting cool.
But I'm acting cool, right? I got my rifle up here, and I'm like, and I never forget it. I asked him, of all the things I could have asked him, I go, where's your armor? Right? He's not wearing body armor. He goes, and this is where I got the lions. He goes, we are lions. He goes, I wear pillows, right? And I went, cool. Do you need anything from me? It's like, no, we got it, right? So we wait for, then they're there, and things are getting crazy, so we leave, right? Yeah. And so now this is important. They walked down there or
Yeah.
ran down there,
Mm-hmm.
but they returned with vehicles. Yeah. So, right. So they come back in, and there's a few trucks, right, that weren't. I don't know where they came from. They weren't on my inventory, and they weren't. But I don't know. And the major comes, grabs me, and he's hugging me. He's like, "Hey," and I say, "Hey, sir, are all your guys okay?" He's like, "Yeah, no casualty. Everything's good. They quelled whatever happened. They quelled it." He's like, "Come with me. I need to show you something." And I'm terrified. I'm like, "Oh man, he's going to show me something that it's going to get me put in prison, right? I'm going to be with the Gitmo guys, right?
I shouldn't be seeing
I
what he
shouldn't
wants
be
to show
seeing
me.
it." And he comes out. And that's when I see the trucks, and he's like, "Hey, look." So I'm looking in the bed of this truck, and it's filled with AK-47s, just filled, right?
What?
Yeah. And he hands me one, and it's completely silver, like silver plated. And he's like, "This is for you," right? And I went, "Whoa, what do you mean it's for me?" Right? He goes, "No, this." And he explains, the history of the gold and the silver AKs and the Iraq. And I was like, yeah, I appreciate it. I put it back. But he just all those weapons. Now the tricky part was every male was allowed to have an AK in Iraq, right? That was the thing. It's kind of like us with CWPs and pistols, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, "That's cool, Major. Can we return these like some kind of way?" And he said he would, but I think they just went to probably across the street to the Kurdish Army Brigade. But yeah, dude, just insane. But I tell you, like from that point, I mean, they'd always done a great job keeping this, but just the willingness to sacrifice themselves for us, right? Knowing that we're in a pickle. At that time, we were very bound by rules of engagement, right? Positive identification, fighting in built-up areas. We could not do a lot like in the early days of the war. Man, they're willing just to come down there, right, for complete strangers, and just say, "Yeah, we're all in."
Yeah.
But
That's cool, man.
Yeah, it was interesting story, interesting times there. But
how you were talking about, there might be an argument that escalates to pointing guns at each other. Like, that's the world over there.
It is the world.
And they'll just shoot each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, they'll legit get into arguments, shoot each other. That's just 100%. How it is. You know what I'm saying? So it's crazy going from a culture that's like ours to going to over there, and that they'll legit do that.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. It is very, very different. It's strange, and I tell you, like you talk about lessons learned and stuff. I tell you, for me, I could have done a better job understanding the culture and the environment before I went. I mean, I'm so excited to get over there. We're going we're going to war, we're doing this thing, as I did not fully understand the complexities of that environment, right? And the history and the culture and the tensions. And, you just know that we went to war with Iraq and there's weapons of mass destruction. And, but I could have done a far better job personally understanding and then conveying that to my folks, right? Because you're over there and, you think you're in this situation that's life and death, and they're shooting at me, I'm going to shoot back, whatever, right? And it's just, you get into survival mode. You don't fully understand the operating environment, right?
Yeah.
But that was on me, right? And I tell you, that was a lesson learned for me as I went into other deployments, is understanding what it is that I'm getting into, not just being so vectored into getting into the fight, right? Let's have some cool stories and do these things, but yeah.
Every part of the world you go into, it's just a whole nother complex problem.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, even in Iraq, the different regions of Iraq, man. You're absolutely right. And I agree with you 100%, man.
Crazy. And were you a major at this point, or you're still?
I was. I was a major. Yeah.
So what happened after this deployment? Where'd you go after that? Or kind of what were major?
Came back home.
Okay.
Went back to the sheriff's office. Got into narcotics at the sheriff's office. I know you had Nikki and Phil.
Yeah.
On the.
You were working with them at the time.
Yeah, Nikki was my trainer.
Okay.
Right? Nikki trained me in narcotics. So
she's hardcore, bro.
She's intense.
She's intense.
Best undercover I've ever seen in my life. Right?
Yeah.
She's phenomenal. Right.
Some of her stories she was telling when we had her, they're crazy, man.
Yeah, she's what we call real police.
Yeah.
Philip, no,
he's hanging out.
I love you, Philip.
Yeah, he's
hardcore. Dude, but yeah, she's real police, man. She trained me in narcotics, and just absolute titan, right, back there. So I did that for a while, and then in 2008 got mobilized again. This time again, it was was not looking to go, but I got a call from a mentor of mine, another Citadel grad, guy named Jim Hurley, local guy here. And Jim Hurley called me, and he was going to be the squadron commander, and said, hey, I had an officer fall out, would you go? And, he's had such an impact on my life that was no question to me. Jim Hurley is the guy that if he called me now, I just have to say, hey, bro, sorry, we got to stop the podcast. Yeah. He's very much like a father to me. Yeah. So went and worked. We went deployed again in 2008 and was in Kirkuk with him, just doing inside the wire security. So it was sectorized, so we divided the base in sectors. So I was responsible for all the entry and exit into the installation. We called it was Gator sector, but folks coming on and off the base were responsible for that. Great deployment, other than, we didn't have any aircraft assigned there. It was a lot of Army presence, and some of the operators, the special folks as we'll call them, were there. So we were responsible for guarding them. Just a lot of indirect fire stuff there. It was constant. But thankfully, the deployment went well, relatively uneventful. In those terms. Came back again after that deployment, went back to the sheriff's office, was still in narcotics, doing that up until 2012, and got mobilized again, this time to Afghanistan. And at the time, I was a squadron commander, so I was still in the reserve. Me back up, still in the reserve. I'd been at the 350 here at Charleston. Moved to the 916th Security Forces Squadron, which is in Seymour Johnson. I was a squadron commander at the time, so my first time in command of commanding a squadron as a G-Series commander. My unit had gotten hit. It was their time in the window to mobilize. There was no way that I was going to send my folks off to war without going with them. So I was able to go with them to Afghanistan. Again, inside the wire mission there. We were part of the International Military Police, so we had it was a coalition, so mostly U.S., but we had Canadians, we had some Romanians, and some Slovaks that were there. So we were responsible for all law and order on the installation. So, from contraband to, like the first one I talked about, right, and speeding, that's what we did. But we also had a big role in everything that comes onto the installation. So entry and exit, searching the vehicles and stuff like that. That was a crazy assignment. A lot of IDF. You think I was thinking Afghanistan. I'm thinking, it's probably like the desert. No, mountainous, cold, rainy, flooding, a lot of elements. But that was a interesting deployment. Had a great boss, Elisa Maloney. Shout out, boss. Took great care of me. He was another great mentor of mine. But was in Afghanistan. Did 6 months there doing that mission. That was kind of the first time, and I went back to my time that I said when I was in Albania, because that was kind of a NATO mission there. That served me well, working with our NATO and our ISAF partners there, right? Because you had all countries that were there, and just, again, differences and, different TTPs and how do you integrate that. And so that was a challenge, but it's also I was able to rely on that experience that I had from Albania to do that. So great deployment. Everyone got home safe, which is always kind of the measure of success. Again,
any hairy situations other than possible things going on? So we got. I'll never forget it. Boss and I were going over to a meeting, right? Because even if you're in war, you got meetings, right? The Air Force loves meetings. If you're an officer,
you're
going to be in the meeting.
So. They had detonated an IED on the outside of the perimeter, and they detonated a fuel truck.
Oh, dang.
Which created a pretty massive, was really a fireball, but it breached the inside of the wall, and they tried to penetrate it. So, we had folks on the perimeters. I think it was Bulgarians on the perimeter. They laid down a ton of fire. My guys, some of which were from my unit, the 916th, responded and participated in that. And the boss and I were just happened to be on the perimeter, right? So,
y'all saw this go down yourself?
Yeah, they went down right after we had passed, right? So, so we saw the aftermath of it. But some of the guys that I deployed, it's interesting because you see hardened guys, and these guys, I won't show their name, I won't say their names, but some of the most hardened defenders I've ever seen in my life. I mean, combat tested and proven. The effect that I saw that it had on them afterwards, right? Just the death, the close call, right? Being there, was
it's a real thing. Takes
yeah,
a major
it's a
toll.
real thing. Yeah,
I think it's been underplayed. Now it's not being underplayed like it was back many years ago
when it was just suck it up and drive on.
Right. But it definitely has an impact on people, and just the explosions, how it affects your brain. Just your brain hitting the side of your skull.
Yeah, the concussive
messes up your brain.
Yeah, but that was close because that's where we had been breached, right? Indirect fire is one thing, right? It's dangerous, and you don't know if you're going to get hit or not.
Mm-hmm.
But when people breach your perimeter and you got people with weapons coming, that's a whole different ball game, right? There. So that was really the only close situation for the boss and I, right? And Bill Gourlay, who was the other officer, was there. Then it becomes a command and control thing, right? And I always, there's guys will talk about gunfighting, and gunfighting is a whole nother thing. But I also think command and control maneuvering of the forces is absolutely critical, right? Because after the gunfight is over, whoever's doing the gunfighting, there's still a lot of responsibilities there, right? How are we going to contain that? How do we fix the perimeter? How do we sweep, right? How do we look for many IEDs or anything that was left behind? So that's, right, that falls on the leadership team to sure. And same with IDF attacks, right? How are we doing the sweeping? How are we inspecting the perimeter? So that's our role right there. And I'll say, with Bill Gourlay and my boss, Lisa Maloney, was just a phenomenal job with command and control there. But that was our role there, right? It's like we're breached, and then we were the law enforcement, so we're responsible for everything inside the wire. Then we have to coordinate with the force protection guys that are responsible for everything facing out, right? Now you're figuring out, well, my radio doesn't talk to your radio. How do we do that? So that whole complicated thing. And when it's during an attack, it gets a little hairy. But but and I always say that, not to take away. I know all the special forces guys are probably up where I'm a gunfighter, and that's great, brother. But somebody's on the other end of that radio,
right?
Calling 9 lines, coordinating support, and all that. So, but that was the most hairy situation, right? And it's always tough. IDF comes in, and we had a lot of third country nationals that work on the installation, right? That's in any base that you'll see overseas. IDF, and unfortunately, if somebody gets hit and killed, how do you deal with that, right? There's always that whole taking care of the body and making notifications or working with contractors and stuff. So but that was probably the most hairy situation that was there. And thank goodness, man, I served with some absolute heroes during that time.
And
guys,
just to clear up for the listener, IDF.
Indirect fire.
Okay.
I'm sorry, indirect fire.
IED.
Improvised explosive device.
Okay.
So anytime they launch something, and in Iraq and Afghanistan both, they got very creative with their ability to launch indirect fire, either rockets or mortars. With mortars, really they used the twos, but with the rockets they are very creative in how they made the rails where they could put the rockets on timers.
So they don't want to be at the
They don't want to
site.
be there because they know we were pretty quick to respond, either with our unmanned aerial vehicles or systems or just fighter aircraft. They can get on target pretty quick and throw a JDAM or two down there, which is always pretty impressive to see. When you get what we call the point of origin, is where the fire was launched from, and then when you vector in and you got folks calling in fire, and I had the opportunity to see that, how we would strike sites in our JDOC, where the guys would get to be able to vector in the point of origin, and then you'd have a JTAC or somebody in there that's talking to aircraft above, and they vector in, and then they launch, destroy, because there's either still an active site or people there, and whichever the case, and they return just to stop the fire, and then the Army or whoever the battle space owner is can go out there and then do the investigation of sorts to see what the device was used. So that's why they use the timers. They didn't want any parts of a JDAM or a Hellfire or anything like that.
Right.
Exactly. Don't ask me what JDAM stands for. It's big ass bomb. Joint direct
they
aerial
got
munitions.
smart as the warfare continued in timing these things and mortaring all the time, moving all the time, blending in, using kids, using women to do and even if they weren't, they force these people to do it. Force kids or force women to do it. And you could just imagine how hard it is for an American or one of our allied soldiers over there or airmen trying to figure out these problems right in front of them, Is this kid a threat? Does this kid have a bomb strapped to him? Do I need to shoot this kid? Right? All these problems, and it messes with the psyche, of the soldiers
100%.
and airmen that are out there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. We we got hit with an IED back to the Mosul and the Kurds, and we were going to the base one day, and we'd have to transit through cities, right? So you're always on alert, but you can, hindsight always being 20/20, you can figure out how the communication was, but we got hit with an IED. They had laid the IED on the side of the road and to kind of the curb, we'll say, but you talk about kids, it was a kid that signaled what we think was somebody sitting in a cab that detonated the IED, right? But what you don't know definitively. So what do you do? And so now, right, you think about, we were able to push through with minimal damage to the vehicles, and everyone was okay. But then, it was just our gunners at the time were exposed. Is before we went to enclosed vehicles where they could fight with crow systems. They're exposed. Just their psyche alone, right? Is do I want to be out here, right? And the drivers are on. Just the psychological impact that something like that has, right? And it's a win for the adversary. So, but you're right. It makes positive identification very tough in those situations.
If you make a bad call too. It's catastrophic, and that impacts your psyche as well.
100%.
If you make a bad call, shoot the wrong person, it's actually a civilian, that makes you feel horrible.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So the problem is so much more complex than the average person who's not really exposed to those things thinks. And I was never on the ground doing it. I was on a ship, or I was on a beach somewhere, just moving Marines around. But, the guys that are out there like what you were doing and your team, just that whole time, it's intense, It
is.
And then you fly back a couple days, you're back in America, and now you're back to normal life, but you're like, you probably still have some of that stress going on where you're checking, the curb, you're checking people on a phone that are watching you. You know what I'm saying? Like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, I agree. And, one day I'll come back and we'll talk about, if you want, resilience and stuff like that. I'm big on that. And, not just my own personal journey of where I've been. I'm not saying, I'm this hardened combat vet, but through my journey through law enforcement and the military, I've had my own personal struggles with what we'll call resilience, or in the Air Force we call comprehensive airman fitness. But I've been there, right? And that's one of the things that I'm very in tune to now is, with helping others. If, you're not in a good place, right? Is how do we get, because I fully believe that it's all recoverable, right? Whether you catch it right or left a bang, not to use a military term, but it's all recoverable. But it's those things. It doesn't matter, brother, if you're on a ship, you're on the shore, you're on the ground. I'm big on, again, not knocking the drink makers of this world. Everyone that serves, they serve, right? Service is service, and it takes everyone from I firmly believe this is a guy that comes from what we would say the combat arms of the Air Force, but by no means am I an infantry guy. But it takes everyone from the logistician to the cook to the ship driver. For us to be able to maintain the strategic presence that we have, it takes everyone, right? And gunfighting is sexy, but I would not say that anyone has a less valuable role. And anyone that raises their hand to serve this country and is willing to make that sacrifice, to me, is somebody that I will always embrace them, because it provides my family. Deb and I are both veterans, but it's for Ava and those in my family. It provides us this, man. Three guys are able to sit out here in the country and have a conversation without worrying about anything, because of that service that folks were willing to take. And I get very emotional about that, but I'm also very, very appreciative. Again, it's not about my service. It's about what people will do long after you and I are gone to continue to preserve the greatness of this nation. That extends to law enforcement, fire, everyone. Right?
I was going to bring that up.
Educators, everyone.
It's not just the military. It's law enforcement, protecting the communities, which, you've been in both worlds, but that can be super challenging too, because if you're on deployment in Afghanistan, for example, when you fly back home, you're home. You're not where you're fighting. When you're law enforcement, you might be in a scenario, a couple blocks from where you live, and then you see those people that you were in a scenario with later, and you recognize each other. Like, I have some law enforcement buddies that's happened to, and they've had people say, hey, I'm sorry about that time this thing happened, or maybe you got vehicles driving by your house and you're like, is this some kind of retaliation from that law that I had to uphold? You know what I'm saying? So that can be super challenging.
You're right, man. and I, Deb is an angel, right? Deb is the best thing that's ever happened to me, and I, she deals with this, and a lot of time, and it probably, now I'm retired from law enforcement, right? So, it's probably not as bad now, but I'm always kind of was always right there at yellow, right? Because we lived in the county that we worked in. So, I worked for Charleston County, but we lived in Charleston County, and that was important to me as an employee, to be there, right? To have a level of, I would say, empathy with the citizens. Now I lived in the city of Charleston, but I'm still in the county, right? So it was important. And, I'll never forget, I bumped into a guy, that I had arrested. I was in Walmart one day, and I was just as a young deputy, right? And it was awkward, right? Because I never forget. He was very cool about it, but he reminded me that, hey, you're not in uniform right now, right? You don't have your colleagues with you, right? And that was a wake up call.
He
for
reminded
me, right?
you that in Walmart?
Oh yeah.
He said this to you?
Oh yeah. Really? Yeah, he did. Yeah, 100%. And I was terrified, man. Terrified, right? Because it was that realization that, you're right. I have this whole other life outside of work, and what happens, when I'm married and I have kids, and what if, it was way before it was time, but you start thinking about these things. But I tell you, it taught me that experience taught me a valuable lesson about how I policed, and still, being respectful to everyone, right? Because even the reality is, policing is a great thing, but the reality is you may think you're in charge, but you're not ever really in charge, right?
Right.
You are influencing people to do what you want them to do, hopefully in the right manner. But that was a wake up call for me, and that, that kind of, went forward with other experience to realize that I'm just always aware of my surroundings, right? If something goes bad, what do I do? How do I grab Ava? How do we get out of here? And, is Deb coming, right? Where's the vehicle parked, and all these things. So, yeah.
That's why I think in a lot of cases, law enforcement can be more challenging to work in and deal with, because when you deploy, it's on your shift. And that's in your backyard, and then you're running that guy in Walmart, and he's telling you, those things. I mean, that is a challenge, dude. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then with the recent, it's not as bad right now, but, within the past couple of years, how police and law enforcement have just been degraded to a certain point. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
That as well, just destroying the psyche of the police officer, the law enforcement officer,
Yeah, I say that law enforcement, and I guess everyone in public safety, they're deployed every day, right? So for you and I, we go out and we go where we go, and then we come back, right? On the military side, and hope to have a sense of stability and family and be able to reset and all these things. But, the men and women that are out there right now, they're deployed every day. I mean, they're wearing body armor and weapons, and they're seeing the worst that we have in society, and then they get up and they do it again the next day. That's a difficult life, and Deb and I will forever be. We're not in that business anymore. We're not in that profession anymore. But we will ever support law enforcement and be thankful for what they do. It's just it's got to wear on them. After a while, because there's no break, right? It's get up and do it again. And I've always kind of argued. Again, back to the deploy. Hey, I deployed here. I did this thing, and I got these medals and stuff. That's awesome. I really appreciate that. But let's give this Dorchester County deputy that had to respond to 3 fatalities yesterday. And has to get up and do it again tomorrow, and might have to respond to an active shooter or a barricade or whatever, right? Let's ensure that we're supporting them, because the human brain is not designed to sustain that. I'm very big on our law enforcement leaders, not to take it in a different direction, but being very mindful of that, ensuring that we're providing the right resources, everything from sleep hygiene to fitness to all these resources that will help these now 28 retirement in South Carolina. It's 28-year career. It's a long time to endure that. So
talking about sleep, and I don't want to burn too much time, but talking about sleep, it's a big deal for law enforcement. I know when I was in the Navy, dude, when we're deployed, I'm not getting hardly any sleep, because I got watch, I have my regular duties I have to do. I have to do this, and then a boarding comes up. I have to go to. So you're not getting sleep, and that takes a toll. Yeah. And many years ago, there was a couple ships that were having collisions at sea in a row, and then the Navy did a study, and it turns out our ship fighters aren't getting enough sleep.
Sleep deprivation.
Like who would have thought? The same thing with the law enforcement too.
Yeah.
Because Chris, and we've talked about this, but he was on night shift for a while. And, if you're on night shift for a long time, like sure, we can all do that for a certain period of time. But if you're on night shift long term, you're not designed to operate like that, and so that's going to take a toll on you as well, especially if your sleep quality is going down because of your shift rotation or whatever, but anyway, sleep has a huge impact on our recovery.
Absolutely.
From working out or operating, or just it's how your body heals itself, So more people need to get more sleep, and 8 hours is what they say is the best, but if you can get 7 hours consistently or whatever works for you.
Yeah.
Now, I know guys I deployed with some Marines, they'd get 3 hours of sleep, they'd be good to go. And there are outliers like that. I'm like, dude, how do I get like that?
Yeah. How can I be down? That's not me. I'm an 8 hour a night guy.
Yeah, me, if I get 6.5 to 8 hours, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'll be able to plus I get a couple Jocko drinks in me, I'm good to go.
That'll work. Yeah, they get you. I feel it.
Anyway, kind of wrapping up your story. Where are you at right now as far as your reserve Air Force stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a colonel now. So I just finished a 3-year tour down at headquarters, Air Force Reserve Command, where I was the chief of security forces. So we affectionately call that the top cop. So best
you're
job.
Overseeing everything.
So
nationwide.
So all the reserve security forces fell under, I'd say, the team and I, right? Mm-hmm. So I was at the headquarters there. So the chief of security forces. So it's a division, but we have, all the units. There's 37 security forces units, about 5,000 defenders. We're responsible for organizing, training, equipping, policy, strategy, advocacy. That was the best job that I've had in my military career. Just the honor to be able to be of service to those young men and women who are out there standing the gate every day and deploying. At any time, there's 10 to 15% of the defenders that are deployed are Guard and Reserve. So we send a lot of our men and women into harm's way each and every day. And just for me to be able to spend 3 years serving them and trying to do my best to get them the best equipment, the best training possible, the best funding was just an absolute honor. So, I'm still serving. So right now, I left that assignment. I am now back in a traditional reserve status. So I'm the immobilization augmentee to the security forces career field manager. So my active duty counterpart sits at the Pentagon, and I'm his reserve counterpart. So in theory, if he were to deploy, be unavailable, it's my role to fill in for him.
You go up there at that point?
Yeah.
Dang.
So drill the Pentagon. So I will start drilling here after the new year. So again, just coming off this transition, I retired from law enforcement when I came back, started a new career in civil service. Still working in the Air Force, where I'm the Deputy Director of Installation Support, but for my reserve career. So I've just been very fortunate to be a colonel. None of that is a result of anything I've done. And I say that in all sincerity. I am at best an average performer. Never been the smartest kid in the class, but God has blessed me to work with amazingly talented people throughout my career, and given me an even more amazingly talented wife to support me and do that. So because of them, I've been able to stay in and progress. I've done a ton of fun jobs, from joint jobs to Joint Element Capabilities Command, working with sister services to this last job at headquarters. So man, I've had a blast in the military, and I would do it all over again if I could, for sure. Absolutely no regrets.
Any recommendations for young folks or maybe individuals considering the military? You know, obviously, the Navy would be a good choice. Air Force is not too bad. Just kidding. But any advice to those kind of folks? Kind of maybe they're thinking about college, maybe not. They don't know what they want to do. What's a good option for them, or what do you think?
So first I'd say is 4 years is going to fly by, right? So you do a 4-year hitch, whether as an officer or enlisted, 4 years goes by at the blink of an eye, right? And it will be a tremendously rewarding experience. I mean, who else is going to pay you literally to see the world, right? and to get out of your hometown and do things. Who else is going to, after your 4 years of service, is going to pay for you to go to school or learn a trade or be able to send you to a program like Skills Bridge for 6 months on the military dime where to give you a job? Mm-hmm. The military takes better care of their people. Probably only second none to Canine Revolution, right? We'll say that. But the military takes great care of their people, right? Yeah. The benefits are tremendous. The experience is tremendous. Now, could I recommend a service? That's hard for me to say. You know, I'm an all-in Air Force guy, but I wanted to be in the Coast Guard, right? Yeah. So I don't think there's a bad option. It really depends on what it is you want to do. Mm-hmm. Now, if I were to give someone advice, it is not going to who wants to go in the military but not as a career, do something marketable. Yeah. Do something that's marketable on the outside or have a plan, right? So I'll be the first to say that being a security forces officer is not the most marketable skill other than maybe leadership, but no one's offered to pay me, 6 figures for my leadership. So that may not be marketable. Yeah. So unless you want to be in law enforcement or security, but do something marketable. Cybersecurity is a big deal right now.
Oh yeah.
It's very, very marketable. Anything with logistics, one day we'll talk about China and logistics. Yeah. Is very, very marketable. But I tell you, you cannot go wrong with even just a 4-year enlistment in the military.
Yeah. Yep. I'll tell you, being in the Navy, I've been on a lot of bases. Air Force has really nice bases.
Golf game strong, son.
So does the Coast Guard. Coast Guard has nice bases too,
they do, right?
Good chow halls in the Coast Guard and the Air Force. You know? Army, not so good at bases.
No. No. Marine Corps. But I guess they're...
Yeah. Marine Corps has the best gyms. I always Air Force too, man. Air Force has good gyms. There's some big dudes in the Air Force.
Yeah, I don't know how well our gyms are used. No, it's just, right? Yeah. Yeah. We invest a lot of money. We're getting there. Yeah.
But I mean, you go into the military, whether it be Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, whatever. You're gonna get that ability to have meals, right? Good meals.
Yeah.
Go to your chow hall. Go to wherever on the base. You're going to have some good food available. You'll have good housing available because they will house you. You know what I'm saying? So that's a big win. And you talked about getting out of your hometown. I think that's important.
It's huge.
Experiencing being away from the thing you've known your whole life. Just experience a couple years away from that. Come back, whether that be going to college or military or whatever, because that'll kind of open up your perspective a little bit. Learning how to interact with people differently, bonding with people, relationships, just good experiences overall, But yeah, the military will pay you to do it, and if you don't know what to do with your life, maybe you do that for a little bit, then you figure out from there. You know what I'm saying? Who knows?
Absolutely. Be an entrepreneur like you.
There you go.
I think your story is one of the most powerful that I've seen. You went to the Citadel and joined the Navy. You got out and you committed yourself to pursuing something that you're passionate. And look at it now. I mean, dude, just what you've done. And I think that's what, when youngsters see the military, they don't realize the benefits of just being in the military, whether it's, discipline or organization or the ability to think through complex problems, whatever it is, that sky's the limit for you, and tell you confidence, right? I can't say I was the most confident young man before the Citadel and before the military, but I think it instills that. And dude, I think, the more people you tell your story to, the more lives you can touch. Because you've done really, really well, and you're doing things that you love to do. I don't imagine you wake up and say, man, I don't want to go to work. Right?
I don't want to go to sleep. I want to keep working, bro.
And just,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries, brother. It's very, very powerful.
The Navy taught me I was going to do 20, 30 years in the Navy. And then I realized, the main reason why I got out is because, I don't want to say I'm a top performer, but if you do a good job, they keep putting you in places where you're going to keep being gone.
That's
basically.
Right. That's the reward for good work is more work.
So they kept, I'd come back from a deployment. All right, you're going to go here now. I'd go there. You got 12 months. No, next month you're going, and then that was going to keep happening. And I was married at the time, and I was like, probably this is not going to be good for long-term relationship. I was enjoying it, but if I was single, no problem, but then I kind of got into the dog thing, and it just went from there, so I will have to tell my story on the podcast one day, because a lot of people ask me about it.
I noticed that you talk to a lot of people and hear their stories. I'm waiting for yours to come out. I know some of it, and I know how powerful it is, brother, so I'm as a listener, I want to hear it.
But like you said, it's not me, I'm just I'm literally an average guy. It's the people like Ben, he's sitting over here. You can't see him on the camera. This dude right here, he's doing so much, you know, that's allowing what we do as Canine Revolution, for example, to do what we do. And our whole team, you know, everybody that you see, you know, coming by, and Chris, who's trained multiple dogs for you guys, you know what I'm saying? Our whole team is again, the leader often gets put, or the boss gets put into the headlights. I'm like, that, you know, it ain't me, it's everybody else. You know what I'm saying? Same thing it is in the military. When I was a junior officer, my guys are the ones, I'd be going to my E6, hey bro, what is this? And I was in the Navy, so I can say, hey bro. You know? I did that to a Marine one time. Not good to go.
Oh no, not good to go.
They corrected me real quick, you know.
With the knife hand. Yeah, the maddest knife hand. Yeah.
But you know, you can go to your NCOs and ask them like, hey, can you teach me this? Can you teach me that? Instead of being a junior officer that's like, I'm the one coming in here, I'm the boss. You do what I say. I was like, you guys got to teach me.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm just your representative to the commanding officer and everything to represent you guys. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of my perspective. But anyway, really appreciate you coming out here, Jeff.
Thanks, brother.
We're gonna cut this we're gonna maintain our timeline. But do you have any closing thoughts for the listener or anybody else out there?
Yeah, no, I'd just say again, thank you for this opportunity. This is great. I admittedly don't do a great job talking about myself. That's just who I am. So
it's
thanks.
hard. I appreciate you coming out and being open to it, you know.
Yeah, but again, I just want to thank you. I know all the listeners are probably alumni or aspiring alumni. I just want to thank for you and Chris, what you've done for Deb and I. Know this isn't closing thoughts, but it's hard for me to articulate without getting emotional what you've done for Deb and I and our family. Keeping us together with Chewy and then Buster and Fetty and everything we went through with Ava and Chewy, we will forever be thankful. And I tell you again, brother, you're a powerful individual. You're inspirational to me, man. So, I thank
both
for,
ways,
thanks for having me out here. And hopefully you'll have my better half out here one time. We'll get her to tell her stories. And she's far more entertaining and engaging than I am.
That's what she said about you.
Yes.
I said, we got to get both y'all. She said, I'll send Jeff.
Oh,
he's got better stories than me.
She's the general of the house, right? She's the taskmaster. But thanks, brother. Again, we're Deb and I both are just so thankful that you all came into our lives and that you've done what you've done for us. And, so thank you for that.
Guys.
Yeah.
I was thankfully blessed with the ability to learn this skill set with the dog stuff. And that's one reason why we do what we do, because I know it impacted my life, and we can help people like how we helped you guys. If we can train people, like Chris trained him, he pulled him out of lawn, got him to get out of there, come over and train some dogs. That's the hard part in these days, is finding people that are willing to put in the hard work. You probably know as well. We won't go off on a tangent, but
we'll be here
if someone's out there listening and you want to be a dog trainer, you can come touch base with me. We'll talk about it. But people these days just they don't want to work hard. Well, we're working with dogs. We're going to be working hard. You know what I'm saying? So
you can be outside like this old Air Force guy.
Yeah. I did have to hit up Jeff last night and say, hey, we're moving the podcast outside. Is that going to be a problem? I know the Air Force ain't really out in the elements. I was just giving him a hard time,
Yeah, I thought about calling in sick, but I knew I wouldn't be able to live it down. So, I appreciate you, brother.
But, again, if you guys want to support the podcast, you can go on to Amazon. You can grab you a Good to Go shirt. You'll be good to go. And one thing me and Jeff were talking about before, supporting America. So we're drinking some Jocko energy drinks. I'm big on the Jocko and the Origin USA stuff. Ben is wearing a pair of Origin USA Delta 68 blue jeans. Nice. And
nice.
Sourced in America, made in America. We didn't get to go into China. But, we need to bring the economy back to America and help support Americans doing America stuff. And make sure that America can stay America. You know what I'm saying? So,
amen, brother.
So we're good to go, man. But thanks again, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you to all veterans out there. Today is in honor of Veterans Day. Thank you guys for your service. Thank you, active duty. Thank you, reserve. Thank you, retired. And also those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country. And the first responders, law enforcement, paramedics. They don't get enough, attention. People don't even know what they're doing. They're doing crazy stuff too. Yeah. Firefighters, teachers, like you said, raising up the next generation. Thank you guys for all you do. And until next time, out.